Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all those around the world. Welcome to the Metaverse Nomads podcast, where we discuss the metaverse and our favorite play-to-earn games. Collectively, the Metaverse Nomads leads a play-to-earn gaming guild called Rome. You can learn more about Rome in the description. Joining me today are my fellow nomads. Jesse, how you doing today?
I am well. I'm looking forward to our show per usual. We've got all of us now here, the usual suspects, so it should be good.
Very, very good. Bonafide, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, brother. Thank you. Good morning across the metaverse. We're all going to make it.
Very good. Fancy.
Yeah, fantastic. Glad to be back another week, and thank you for tuning in, everyone. Looking forward to this one.
And Ray, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I've just had great conversations. There's so many good conversations you can have in the space and across different chains, different games. It's just an exciting place to be. I'm excited.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on, and I think today is going to be a reflection of that. A little bit of everything today. We've got all of us here, which is a great thing to see. So why don't we get started with some metaverse news? Fancy, what do we got today?
Yeah, it's been quite a busy week this week. One of the things is the New York Stock Exchange filing a metaverse trademark for NFTs, and that's a huge indicator that big money is arriving, even if the whole market's looking red this week.
It's reminiscent of back in the day where businesses are all of a sudden, all right, Ford's like, I guess we better get Ford.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's any surprise that the money's coming. It's kind of a bitter pill to swallow, right? Because it's always great when it's new and it's fresh and it's gritty and dirty. But you really need the money to push the space forward. But then comes all the stuff that you see with the money, the corporatization, the patents, the territorial pissings on who owns what and that type of stuff.
I think you hit it on the head there, Banjo. I mean, we're at there's those cusp points, those branches in the road, throughout history. And I think we're at one of them where, in the beginning, everybody's kind of coming from the same sort of a place as far as, where the metaverse and blockchain crypto space is. And as these new people come in with older ideas and older traditions, it's going to be incumbent on us to kind of help push things the way we want to see things go, as far as where we put our attention, where we put our money, and who we're willing to sell to and give up our space to.
Yeah. Well, we didn't really plan on talking about this, but something did happen this week that was kind of scary, and that was a government. We don't necessarily get too deep in the weeds, making it very clear that they have no qualms about shutting crypto accounts down. So, for the people who have to deal with that around the world, that's a tough thing. Crypto was always the panacea of getting yourself away from the control. And now we're in a position where people are watching some of their crypto wallets be monitored.
Yeah, the rhetoric around what's happening, up north is pretty terrible from where I am positioned on the globe. And when it comes to centralized cryptocurrency companies, then sure, yeah, you're more likely to have your funds tracked and then ultimately stopped if you were going to send any money. But there's videos sharing that are being shared of a Canadian trucker, getting an envelope of a gentleman who is highly invested in crypto, and gave him an envelope with a 24 word seed phrase, and he basically gave him the lowdown and previously gave him some prior to that interaction. So it's almost like at the end of the day, you really can't stop one way or another the exchange of cryptocurrency. It's going to always be a way. Yeah,
I think that falls on the backstory of that same thing, where that same group of activists, not that I'm following the whole story close, but I did see the part where they had a Kickstarter where they raised quite a bit of money, and that money was frozen because and it goes to show you, whoever controls the money controls the narrative. They control so much, and so crypto is kind of the great liberator. But then you even still have influence coming in, where you see people that USDT, where all of a sudden people that hold large amounts of that, something like 3 million or so, has been rendered useless. So yeah, we got to be careful up in here within decentralization to make sure we protect it, because it's going to speak volumes for who can have a voice, because money that backs that voice is louder. And if people control the money, they control the voice.
Well, Ray brought up a Ray brought up a good point about the handover of the custody, right? They did it with the 24 words.
Mhm.
And that is how you get around, having your crypto on an exchange and it getting locked down. You got to do your own custody. As dangerous as that sounds, it's not as hard as people would think. All of us do it here to some degree. But if you can just,
I think it's vital.
Give, yeah, 100%, man. If you can just give that 24 seed over, you're now basically moving money around by hand.
Freedom of speech. I just told them 24 words.
Yeah.
Go ahead, vote.
No, I mean, I think it's real key. People tend to forget. I hear a lot of other people here in the metaverse and the NFT gaming space talk about things like, us all being doxxed and having to do a KYC for certain games to get rid of bots and things like that. And I always push back against that because we're forgetting the cypherpunk decentralized ethos that got us here in the first place. It gave us the power and the financial stability that some of us are starting to experience. And giving that away is not a smart move. So, I've been in for, a few years, and I feel uncomfortable if I have to have something on an exchange. There's a lot of things I won't even get into if I have to leave it on an exchange. If I can't get it into a hardware wallet somehow, or at least into my own custody wallet, I don't want to deal with it usually. I'll wait until it's, in a more decentralized form to where I can interact with it in a way that I feel safe. And, I feel safer outside of banks. And so for me, when things like government shutting things down occur, it doesn't really affect me. And, it's been like that, a couple of years ago, my brother was saying, oh, the government's going to come after you and they're going to shut down that Bitcoin. They're not going to let you have it. And I said, I could just walk across a border and use my money in the Philippines or any other country. Then it's not like they can't stop it. They'd have to shut down the entire internet. And if you're thinking and moving in that kind of from that kind of a perspective, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. In many ways, it's strange to think about it from a very high esoteric level about like, what is the extent of which humanity is going to have people that try and dictate what you can and can't do. If all of a sudden I have a bunch of seashells and I determine that these seashells are worth a certain amount of value and others agree on it, is someone going to come and take those seashells now? It's like, it's a funny place we're in where humanity's trying to grow beyond this seemingly stuck level. At least that's how it appears to me.
It seems to me that there could be some sort of system that develops out of this where, pieces of paper or plastic or what are linked to a certain amount of crypto on the internet or on the blockchains. A few years ago, I gave cryptocurrency to some of my employees as a Christmas gift, and it was all a wallet. I mean, it was a wallet on a piece of paper. So if you think forward and start to look at crypto wallets as pieces of paper that you can pass around as currency, there might be a way to circumvent some of this government stuff just by moving that around as a trusted, you can trust that this is worth, 10 USDT or whatever. It's unfortunate. That's all I can say is the Western society seems to be going south pretty quick.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like one's take and their philosophy on money, but then their country's fiat-based currency, and then what it means to be in control of your own future when it comes to, finances. A lot of people are dependent and just grow up that way on centralized financial systems. And it's going to take, I was talking with my sister the other day about the same thing with the business school, the model of business for colleges, right? There seems to be the 80-20 rule, I always say applies, but if you're going to be a lawyer, doctor, or anything other that needs a degree, then sure, you have to go to school. But a lot of people don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't know what they want to do, and then they don't even have the means to do so monetarily because of just the state of individuals and their financial situation. So when it comes to crypto, it's just like, if you're going to always think about crypto paired with USDC, then I think you're looking at it wrong. After you kind of get acclimated to the space and of some pretty good projects, you want to see that pair against Ethereum or Bitcoin, because if we see the shift from traditional companies moving into even governments and countries with legal tender, you pick an industry, it's coming in, music, anything. So are they all stupid and you're the smart one not getting on board as that Super Bowl commercial kind of gets across that message. If we'll go over that one later, but I think it's time that you kind of disassociate or try to detach that way of thinking with the fiat currency, although it's still a staple of everyday commerce. I think it's just like the gaming and the investor mindset. If you're in here to game, you're going to be, led with your emotions to invest. And if you don't have any background in investing, you might get taken advantage of and feel some type of way about NFTs in general.
To be fair, I think it's just difficult for people from Western society because we're kind of trained from a young age to kind of give up our autonomy. You have a tax preparer do your taxes, you have the bank manage your money, and you feel safe that way, not realizing that you're actually kind of giving away a large part of your safety and trusting another individual or a group of individuals to maintain that for you. And so, when you move into crypto and there's no help desk you can call, if you send something to the wrong address, it's scary. But at the same time, there's an incredible amount of power there when nobody can stop you from moving money from one address to another as well.
And also, based on what you just said there, Bonafide, you're doing all of these things by a set of rules. The chances are you didn't agree to, nor did you have any say how they were developed.
Your mic went out a little bit. It's low.
Is that any better?
Yeah.
Repeat what you said, though. Repeat what you were saying.
Saying that those rules that in the processes that we are trained to follow, chances are we didn't agree to them, and we didn't have any say in how they were established. It's just something you are expected to follow along with.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges for me, and I feel like I'm riding one foot on the side of crypto and one side against crypto, is the farther we move towards technology as a solution, the farther it gets away from the layman to understand it. And it's already hard enough for the layman to go and actually have to understand. Look at the example you gave was your taxes. So the more we move away from the average person being able to understand something, the more easily they're manipulated with that tool. And I think we're already starting to see how the government is impacting the ability to move some of that money. It's a hard thing. I think we're going to go through a lot of years of trial and error with crypto. I don't think this is going to be as easy as crypto defeats government, end of game.
I think you're right on that, Banjo. I remember last week when you guys were doing the podcast, Casper said something that was really impactful to me. He said the whole of crypto is basically reliving financial history. And that's kind of what we're talking about now, right? Wild West perspective and moving into the future of the metaverse. Yeah.
And those of us who pay attention to world finance know what points in time our current financial system have gotten screwed over. So, there's nothing that says that couldn't happen again if the right people aren't watching out. And again, it gets so technologically based that the average person can't understand when they might be getting screwed. I know we got that actually kind of segues into our next story with the OpenSea hack and people not understanding how they're getting screwed. So Fancy, can you share us what you got there? Share with us.
Yeah, so you called it a hack. What it was really was a phishing scam because it was originating outside of the OpenSea website. So people clicked on a link that looked authentic. It left a open contract that had like an expiration date that was going to end soon. So they executed them all at once, and OpenSea just started being drained. It was quite bad. Really, nearly 3 million in assets were stolen.
It's a very scary evening in NFT. I was sharing a lot of the updates as they were coming out in our Discord, and as we were trying to figure out, is it because one side was saying it was phishing, and the other side was saying it was a interaction with a smart contract that caused the problem, and all of these things were learning experiences if you were there. So hopefully everybody was paying attention and nobody got burned too bad. Well, we know some people did, but
I forget who did it, but somebody posted a link that allowed you to check your wallet to see if you were at risk. I think it was Ray who posted it. Now, I went through and I was safe, but maybe we should socialize that link.
Yeah, I'd love to see that link.
Yeah, there's a handful of them that are out there where you can put your address in and see what approvals you gave to any projects, and then you can revoke them at a cost of a transaction fee on the Ethereum network. But it's an insurance to be had when it comes to things like this after they happen, if you weren't, unfortunately taken for a ride.
And I don't know about anybody else, but I know personally when I went through mine and I started revoking, I realized that I was in a dangerous spot. I hadn't revoked a whole lot of things. So hopefully everybody did their housekeeping. And I mean, it was just a good learning experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
We are in the Wild West phase for sure of crypto and NFTs and all of these different projects out there. In fact, in Discord, Banjo, you shared a Twitter story that I followed along about a very, very elaborate, process of trying to scam this guy. And, and the dude he was the head of a project. So he's crypto savvy himself. So he was almost at risk. He just made one really good choice, which I think is a good best practice, is that multiple wallets are free. So if you're going to get into a new project, you might as well create a wallet and utilize that wallet for that project. And what that essentially does is it puts a fence around any damage that can happen to you while being involved in that project.
Yeah, I think that's super smart. And that story was so elaborate. It felt like a movie, honestly, like a movie that you'd watch, 90 minutes, special on. What we're talking about here, as far as the transparency and the technology and the stuff that people don't know because the technology is exceeding our expectations, this kind of leads into this question from the audience here. And this might open up a little bit of a hornet's nest, but here we go. So let's talk about projects that don't have transparency, don't tell you numbers or anything like that. So, this past week, Gala Music announced their now music nodes. And they're selling them for about $1,200 a piece. And they have an NFT project with Snoop Dogg that's going to be on top of that. But they're not giving any tokenomics, and they're not even telling you how many nodes there are going to be. So this is a great example of people trusting something without being given any information whatsoever. What are you guys' thought on the Gala Music drop?
I think that it's another example of how Gala is not net positive for this industry. I don't even think they're net positive for the world. I think they are dangerous because they are going to become one of the most accessible on-ramps for the people that are less savvy, less crypto savvy, less blockchain anything, to come into the space. And because the way that they're going about it, they're going to turn off a lot of people. And that's going to be a lot of people's first experience.
Yeah. I actually lucked out and got in my node. I got a Gala Music NFT, I guess, from Snoop Dogg's album, but
Wow.
I wasn't planning on interacting with that part of their ecosystem at all. So, it's like you said. I mean, they haven't really shown any type of real desire to be decentralized or to be transparent, which means that you're kind of just betting on their continued success. But there's so many different things you can bet on at this point that they have to be very successful in the future in order for half of what they say they're going to do to come true. And that's a pretty, it's the bar is getting higher and higher without them showing the ability to meet it.
Yeah, I think everyone's pretty clear that we think they're just kind of a money machine, but it just seems like every time we turn around, there's another thing that proves that point for us. And they don't have the transparency. I mean, you want to do a project, you want to do it right, you go all the way. So do gaming, do it right. We'll give you that and get 100% behind it. But behind it, so far as your leadership aren't a bunch of assholes. But beyond that, when you get into music, and I suspect they're looking at other stuff too, they're spreading the peanut butter too thin.
That and the support also, because if you're a Founders Node owner, there was a reasonable. It was never clearly said that you'd be a part of everything they ever do, but there was a reasonable expectation as a Founders Node owner that you would be a part of something like a Gala Music, and now they're coming out with a Gala film as well, or something like that. And these are all just avenues to sell more and more NFTs without having to produce anything this year or next year.
Yeah, somebody here figured out how many.
Gala Burgers.
Pretty near you.
Gala Burgers. Yeah, there could be a movie about that, right? Somebody figured out how much money in NFTs they've sold so far here. Somebody bandied a number.
Yeah, it wasn't the amount that they sold, and I didn't even get to Miranda's because I'd done Miranda's in the past, and I didn't include Townstar. So those are their two biggest. So if we exclude those two, they have put up for sale over 900 million in NFTs. And it seems to be the average with a launch. When they launch a game, it's somewhere between 36 and 50 million.
So that's crazy.
Insane.
For one. For what they've put out versus what they're taking in is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm going to fight back and support Gala this time around against what Jess said and say that if it wasn't for them, then there wouldn't be as many conversations that were being had around NFT gaming and crypto as a whole, because it is their first entry into the space. And if it wasn't for that, then it would be a centralized exchange where they now see the tickers for crypto on Robinhood. So depending, even though Gala is spreading out into many things where they started off with gaming, I think people need to get hurt. like we all did at some point in our lives to pick a topic. Or
you got to pay tuition.
That's what I'm saying. And it's not that I want nothing bad to happen to anyone per se. It's just that I had to go through it. No one taught me, right? Not necessarily the way until you have to earn your badges in the space. And just thinking that you're going to get rich quick from your friend or from what you hear on TV, then you're in for a rude awakening. And there comes in Gala, which could be that rude awakening for you at this point, where it was pretty beneficial if you got in earlier on, like many other projects, but nothing like that is sustainable where you're making hand over fist cash in any particular crypto token. So I think I'm glad that they're around, because if it wasn't for them, it would be all rainbows and butterflies. Like who would be the person who replaces Gala in our space if they weren't even in existence? Just the faults of SLP and the Axie Infinity, or how let's say Peg Axie or another project could do something different to spin it on its head to make it more profitable, or to kick the can down the road. Like, where are we at? Or is this all Ponzi economics?
You see, the story needs a villain.
There you go.
So Gala's either going to be AOL or they're going to be Amazon, is what I'm hearing, and I'm leading towards AOL right now. I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was an update to their EULA that everyone has to sign when you log in, and it talks about the ownership of your personal data as it's acquired or bought by another company, meaning it was language that sounded like they might sell out someday.
Yeah,
it sounds like they're trying to sell everything they can, right? And they can come up, like Jesse was joking about earlier, but it's not so much of a joke, because we've heard Eric Schumacher on streams talking from that perspective of trying to sell anything you can for the highest price possible. Yeah. So, but I just wanted to go ahead and play devil's advocate with you for a second, Ray, and jump on Team Gala for a minute and admit. Well, I just wanted to admit that Gala's actually, besides, they don't talk to me in the Discord anymore or anything like that, but they've treated me well financially, and I don't know anybody who's been really hurt by buying into their stuff early. You know what I mean? I can't say that. I think, for the most part, people have been able to share in their success so far. But that's always how it is in any kind of rug pull, is the people who are in the beginning, they make a killing, and then the people who get left holding the bag,
Any good Ponzi works that way.
Mm-hmm. We throw these terms around lightly, I think, with a lot of projects, or just because the repertoire of words to describe things laymanly or to the layman are not, I guess, solidified, because there's different phrases and terms being used for different things all the time, just in the space in general. But to the point that we're talking about, being devil's advocate, is just, I had a great conversation with a friend in the space just earlier this morning. And this is like a reoccurring topic where it's just like, in my mind, are you approaching the space as a gamer or an investor? These two worlds are colliding, as they weren't before in the traditional space. Yeah, you probably, quote unquote, invested in a console and then invested in the game, if you want to use the word invested, but you didn't. There's no return on that unless you sell it back at a lower price back to GameStop. But in this space, the potential for you actually to make a return is dependent on you and the market and what's in demand at what point in time, and etc. But if we're going to be a gamer coming into the space, because we talk more on the lines of investments on the show, I would think so. But I got involved for Axie and then also in Gala Games as a gamer. I wasn't trying to get rich quick on Gala or profit in a way. I saw the potential of that game for Miranda's being such where I can play the game, enjoy myself, and then also reap some rewards from putting in the time. And honestly, I want to go.
You can't sell $1 million NFTs for the fun of gaming. You can't do that.
Hold on. See, but you're talking from the point of the company itself, from the top down, and their strategies as a marketer, or as just as in general, sales in general, or coming in from the bottom, right? As a gamer, these games are going to appeal to someone, and they're going to drop money in. Maybe not everyone's going to think they're going to get rich. So they might be buying these assets to eventually play with, to make some money back, and then that return on investment starts when the game finally comes out. But I'm just, being devil's advocate here. There's different ways to think about it. But if you're just an investor in the space, of course, this is the worst thing to get involved in, because you're not going to be making anything back because you don't know. There's no information. That's not right in itself. But
so Ray, I have a question. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Hit me, guys. Hit me.
I was going to say that. So here's the thing that I think needs to be considered. With the millions of dollars that are spent on each of these games, do we think all these games are going to be successful? Of course they're not. So somebody's going to get left holding the bag. But if you look at it from the perspective of what is Gala offering, Gala is pitching the idea to game developers that, hey, we will become your blockchain partner. My question is that as you're developing this portfolio of 10 and growing into probably 15 and 20 games this year, like, where have you demonstrated that you know how to create play to earn games? Where's your successful model? What, Townstar? That's it? And you have now 10 games in your portfolio. They have not demonstrated the expertise or ability that they can be a blockchain gaming partner. And the president of blockchain, which is Jason Brink, what is his experience with being a president of blockchain? He was the president of marketing before. You can't just wear the hat and all of a sudden you're a pro. So what is their model? Where's it demonstrated?
Yeah. So that's the thing. I agree on the lines of an investor's mindset and an investor's philosophy. This it doesn't make sense. It's not built any way in terms of confidence on an investor's standpoint. But if you're a gamer and you want to play Mirandus, people buy skins, not expecting a return, just because it's a skin. People invest in Z-Bucks and fucking, excuse my language, but they buy consoles not to think they're going to flip it 10 times more a year later after they've exhausted their fun out of it, or if it just dies out as a trend. So as a gamer, people are buying these things, and then their investment mindset kicks in, because it's just like, oh shit, not only playing can I get a return at some point with Gala, because other games you can actively get a return sooner than later. But then you start thinking about, hey, if I set up, it gets you to think about business, how you would run scholars if that's what's the most dominant thing or topic in that game. There's, for every ecosystem of an NFT game, there's many ways to make money. So if you're getting into just from one angle or aspect of a game and you get burned, that doesn't discount the game to be a success or a trailblazer or a potential moneymaker in the future for yourself. That's all I'm saying.
We'll be lucky if my grandchildren can play my NFT assets in Miranda's.
Right. Miranda specifically.
I may not live long enough to see it playable.
I like this comment from iGuard. There it goes. Maybe there's not too much room for experience since it's all first-time application. This goes back to how new we are in the space, right? So of all the games we've talked about, it's kind of like the crypto space. I mean, basically everything is an experiment and everything is still being worked on. And nobody really knows what the proper economic model is going to be, how to make a play-to-earn game that's going to last the next 10 years. I mean, we know how to make a World of Warcraft, but we don't know how to make a blockchain-based economy that's going to survive that long. So, who's to say at the end of the day, whose way is right or whatever?
Why make 10 of them then? Make one get it right.
I mean, hopefully, I tend to still hope that Gala does well. At the same time, I'm not just investing in Gala as a rule anymore. So there's that. But like Ray said, I mean, if you're there just to play the games, then apparently they have some good games coming. We'll see. That's kind of what I'm waiting for. Is I want to see them have actual good games with actual good play to earn mechanics before I'm gonna be able to safely buy anything more that Gala produced.
Right. But, when the games drop, who's gonna be there? The gamers who bought in high or bought in low or didn't sell. The investors might not be there, and that's their own quarrel with the company or any project. You're gonna get in to make money, and then but that's the thing. There's a 80-20 or 60-40 or whatever. What part of what you're doing is gaming related or investing related? We all talk about enjoying the game when it comes out, but right now what you can do is invest and on the hopes of what they're telling you to believe, which
there's a clear element of greed with what Gala's doing, because
I
even for
agree.
Raw Mega, what Raw is
Absolutely.
saying here is absolute, like, makes sense. To be fair, no one has proven the PDE model fully. However, there are people that are really putting in the sweat, and I don't see Gala doing that. I'll give you a perfect example. So about a couple weeks ago, I got involved in Pegaxi. Today, I was watching the result of some things that they have put in place that they're changing this week for their model. And they're looking at ways to be able to control the burn rate. They're actually diving into the mechanics. What is Gala doing about that we can see? There's no transparency there. So I appreciate the games where a team and a community is behind a single game that's saying, look, this is all new. We're not going to try and juggle 15 different projects. It's hard enough to get one right. So let's focus on this for the people that have invested in it, rather than us just snatching their money under the guise of, oh, eventually it's going to be playable.
It's going to be so rare.
These.
Absolutely.
No, get one right first. That's the way you can serve your community and serve the people, rather than creating this buffet of stuff that may never come out.
I don't think anybody could disagree with you there, Jesse. Shout out to our Nomad out there in the comments who asked us to talk about Gala. This is what you get when you get us talking about Gala. So, I mean, until they got some actual meat on the bone for us, as far as working play-to-earn gaming ecosystems beyond Townstar, we're always happy to discuss them. But this is kind of what you're going to get until they actually produce something.
Yeah, and I agree to just, it's just like, and the companies that Gala ties themselves to, like 888 and their recent drop at a purchase in at 11.11 ETH, there was a lot of pushback against on the crypto Twitter space against what they were doing with their music, or with these what do you call it? These profile picture music
orbs.
Type of the orbs. There you go. Thank you, Banjo. Yeah, so it's just like, if you're not really researching outside of Gala and its partners or its dealings around and in the space, it doesn't add up to be anything that gives you more confidence as you go, which is unfortunate. Outside of just what they don't give you for any of the games that they're going to release whenever they come out. So it's totally day and night compared to a lot of other projects if you start exploring.
Well, if we look at the timeline of NFT launches for Gala, with Boxies and some of the other stuff they've done, and now these orbs that they were involved in, they've never gone as successfully as they wanted to go. There's always something that comes up. And this time, and I think this is something I appreciate, it's the community pushing back and saying, look, these are too costly, right? Well, 11 ETH for an NFT, and then for people who don't know, the artists ended up pulling their art, the mint, and then putting it back on, and who knows what contractual stuff was sitting there behind the scenes on that. But when you start pushing 11 ETH as a floor for some of these projects, that it was a novel project. It's pretty interesting. It's a one of a kind that always changes art and always changes music forever and in perpetuity, or in forever, right? So the idea was cool, but it wasn't 11 ETH cool.
And they're testing what the market will bear, and they finally got some pushback.
Yeah,
and I think me and Jesse have been asking the community to do this for a long time, as far as pushing back on these prices, not buying this stuff, because the fact of the matter is Eric Schumacher has said previously that he's trying to sell things for as much as he can possibly get them for. And if he sells something and it sells out right away, he wants to sell it again for higher. And that's his business perspective. So he's going to push us as far as where we are as a community allowing him to do. So it's on us, like I was mentioning earlier, to kind of be the stewards of where we want this space to go with our attention and with our money. That's how you vote in this space.
Yeah. I want to bring this topic up here because this speaks to something that I've been watching with Gala. They're trying to be the Steam of the P2E space, and I think there's room for that somewhere. Somebody's going to do it, and they're going to do it right. I don't know if I can say what the game is, but there's a game up for node vote to bring it onto the network that's currently already on. Okay, well, there we go. It's Grit. That's already on Steam and has a play test going, and the play test is not getting good feedback from the community. So now they've gone from Steam, and they're going to get all this cash injection from NFT sales. So we're bringing a game that didn't work on Steam to Gala to be like Steam. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, their whole model is, which is bizarre to me, is that it seems like their every move is kind of like a politician. What will the market bear, and what will the people tolerate? What will the people believe? And I'll give you a perfect example of that. In the world of Mirandus, it was said very early on that magic was going to be extremely rare. It's not something you see very often. Now
it's money.
there's a complete flip to where it's the currency, Materium.
Right.
By the way, Materium is now in the back. If you look at your balances, it actually does show up there. Not the actual Materium yet, but the coin is actually there along with BAT and Town Coin and Ethereum and Gala. So it actually does show up in your back office now. But that's the thing, is that they keep making these pivots that just seem to support marketing and not actual creativity in developing a game for fun gameplay. I haven't seen that piece yet.
I just got a cool idea for a meme with that. You're looking at something and you're like, there's no way we can make an NFT out of that. And then Gala Games is like, hold my beer. Somebody make it for me. I'll share it. Hey, shout out to Punjab from the chat. Remember, guys, markets decide what things are worth. Gala does not decide these things. They and their partners decide the starting price. From there, we decide to buy or not. And that's kind of going back to what I was saying before. We decide what we're going to buy. We decide what we're going to play and where we're going to put our attention, what we're going to talk about. And these are the things, and how we're going to talk about them, more importantly. And these are the things that are going to push these developers in these different ecosystems to do what we need them to do.
Yeah, it's perfectly said, because you vote with your dollars. On many types, on a lot of things where it's needing funding, you could always be. See, but that's the thing. Money could be raised, and these games could still be developed. But ultimately, it's a tug of war.
Here's why I don't like that, and I don't think that works, because you got to remember where this money's coming from. So yes, we do teach them what the market will bear, and I do believe in personal responsibility for sure. But what we have is this really strange false economy of funny money, of people who made ETH back when it was $40 a pop, and now they're spending that money in a game on hopium of what they think in their minds they're creating the story around. That does not make it accessible for the average gamer. So it's not really doing anything for the industry as a whole. A company that's doing something for the industry as a whole, in my opinion, is a company that's saying, look, how do we create an onboard for the metaverse, and for people who aren't crypto savvy, that don't have a whole lot of crypto now, that are starting with their credit card, how is it accessible for them? And this isn't. As they keep scaling the price, it's only a small group of people that can play that game.
Reminds me of Max Kaiser way back in the day. He famously was talking about all these altcoins coming into the space, and how basically, because you had to, at that time, you had to buy Bitcoin first and then go buy these altcoins. And he was telling people, hey, they're stealing your Bitcoin with these altcoin ideas. And I think we're seeing a similar thing in the NFT space right now, where they're stealing your ETH with these NFT projects.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? They're stealing the underlying currency. If you're on Cardano or whatever, Solana, they're stealing something that probably could have some value for something that you're going to trust them to create value for you in.
Well, that was a big rabbit hole we went down.
Like we always do about this time.
But it's a part of the conversation, man. That's the metaverse that's forming, and these are the players.
I agree. And that puts a Gala off the agenda for the rest of the day, I think. All right, Fancy. I think there was another part to the OpenSea story. What do you got?
Yeah, so as I said, it was roughly 3 million in assets that got stolen. There was some Bored Ape yacht clubs that disappeared, and this guy, he got his NFT sent back to him. I thought that was quite funny.
I think it's hilarious.
Well, it's a flex, right? You can get it, and then you can send it back to the guy. You don't control anything.
Yeah, the comment section was telling him to send it back to the hacker again.
Hot potato.
Hilarious.
That is funny.
I don't want it. No one wants it.
So, another thing that happened this week was this was going around Twitter, and I think it's quite interesting because 61% of millennials with income over 100K now own crypto, which is really impressive, really.
It is impressive, but I wish they would put what percentage of the total populations those were, right? So how many millennials have an income of over 100K as a relation to the rest of the population? I think it's probably small considering the average wage.
Yeah.
But what it does say is that the future, these groups are more and more going to be moving into crypto.
And I think a lot of this also is a direct reflection of disposable income.
Yeah, and look at millennial men versus women, right? So really, it's millennial men who are doing the majority of the purchase in that 61. It's not millennial women, which just goes to show that this is a space that's still poorly weighted from a male-female perspective.
Well, also, there's a lot of speculation too, and so I think I mean, even if you look at like the casino and gambling industry, I think you're going to find a similar ratio between men and women.
It's a good point. Men are more willing to take risks, right?
Right. That's exactly what I was about to say. Yeah.
Very interesting. It seems like there should be more, though. I mean, if I'm sure this is U.S. and not, it's U.S.
Yeah.
It seems like there should be higher numbers there.
Yeah,
I guess
it'd
we
be
live
good
in
to
a
get
bubble.
more of these in the future.
Yeah, somewhere I forget who, Raw Paul, I think was talking about how the adoption rate is faster than the internet adoption rate of use. For cryptos, actually, it's scaling adoption at a faster rate, which is interesting.
Wow. Another thing that happened this past week is just a sign that the big money's coming into the space. JP Morgan put out a pamphlet, and I'm assuming to its investor class about the opportunities in the metaverse. Did you guys get a chance to read it?
I like it. And as I mentioned you guys offline, I've sent this to a number of my friends that when I try and talk metaverse or blockchain gaming to them, they're kind of like, they don't get it. And so and I'll tell you the language. When I sent this to them, I said, hey guys, here's a PDF from JP Morgan. So this is an opportunity to kind of understand what they see as opportunities through the lens of institutional money.
Yep.
It's really neat the way they laid it out. A number of us have read through financial paperwork before for different companies. And I'm drawn to it because they usually make it easy to read and digest. They don't get too in the weeds on the technicals of it all. And there's just some big numbers here. I mean, the one thing that I thought was most neat about this paper was a comparison between Web 2.0 and 3.0, because Web 3.0 is kind of a buzzword that's popping up over the past couple months. And it's getting more and more traction. And I think a lot of people don't understand it. And this page right here helped me frame it better than I was framing it personally. Did you guys see this at all?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I thought that was good.
Really
That
like
was
the
really
way
well
it's laid
done.
out.
Yeah. I was
Well, and
actually coming at it from a perspective of not wanting to like it either, and they did a really good job.
Yeah. Also, it starts at Second Life, which is quite a logical place to put it. Like, it's just a great way presentation.
And so also on the heels of this was timing. So this is kind of their strategy, is they're sharing that, hey, they're taking part, and this is part of a justification. They want people to know why, because also they opened up the Onyx Lounge in Decentraland. So they actually bought some land, and so they're going to figure out ways to make use of that to kind of stake their claim.
Yeah, I went as soon as I read this document out because I saw Decentraland at the top, and JP Morgan. My personal belief is they're kind of a shady company to begin with. However,
Agreed.
when they're putting stuff out there like the Decentraland Sandbox Somnium, that's the ones they're looking at, right? So where's the big money going to go? And to Jesse's point, they just bought a lounge in Decentraland. And so I went to Decentraland to see what the minimum price for land is right now, and it's around $15,000. So it's not cheap. And that's the entry level. So I think this is a boat that I've missed personally. Did anybody else get into Decentraland?
I was actually I was actually doing some research on it a couple of weeks before Facebook renamed Meta, and you could still get in under $1,000 with certain plots. And I didn't pull the trigger because I was buying other stuff. So there you go. Sandbox as well. There was a couple of plots I was looking at in Sandbox and Decentraland.
Yeah, back in 2020, I was between Axie and Decentraland. I made my profile, I made my character, I jumped around. It was barren lands for sure back then, and it didn't appeal to me. I saw the potential. I saw how the narrative back then was have your meetings in Decentraland. That was like the main selling point, and there wasn't many people buying even then, to really build out to what it looks like today. But I took my route was Axie, and then for what I had at the time. So I should have got the token because even the token did well for that period of time during the run up.
Yeah. If anything, that we've been able to determine that news influences the top two players being Decentraland and Sandbox. Both of those got a sizable boost, bigger than any other project on Meta News with Facebook rebranding. So I think it's because it's two of the most accessible projects for mainstream to wrap their mind around and comprehend. So I think they'll continue to get that.
Yeah, and for me, it's just a function of not seeing the future of what was there, because there was some game conference that was either in Decentraland or Sandbox. I can't remember which one it was, and it was so 8-bit, and that's not a style I like. And I was like, I'm not anywhere near interested in 8-bit figures moving around this 3D space. So I just was turned off from it from the get-go. But it seems like I may have missed the boat on it.
Well,
That's the
speaking
biggest
of
thing.
which, I want to tell you about a project that I'm not endorsing yet, but it's one that I'm in the research phase of. I've been researching it for the past week, and I'll continue, and that's OVR. And what that is, it's a land sale, but it overlays on top of the existing land on planet. And what their approach is they're going towards augmented reality. So if you actually own a piece of that land, like I've got stuff in my front yard here in Amsterdam that I could purchase while the rest is sold, but then I could actually create my own 3D augmented reality stuff placed on that plot. So if someone comes by, that's what they would see. So there's projects like that they're pretty well doxed. They are doing some really creative stuff, and I'm still in the homework phase of it, really kind of specking them out. But there are other projects out there that I think are going to pick up steam.
Well, you're in Amsterdam. Is that stuff in front of your house red light district related? I'm sure you'll make bank.
It's close.
Yeah, there's several coming out that have all kinds of different ideas as far as like VR, and even I've seen things where they're talking about like you order a coffee in the metaverse and it comes to you in real life as well. Okay. And you're drinking in both places simultaneously, right? So the thing is one of the reasons I didn't go hard on Decentraland back in the day was because I was like, what's stopping somebody from creating more virtual land? I mean, real estate in real life has a finite supply, and that is the reason for the value. So if you start creating digital land, you have an unlimited supply, right? However, what we've seen with NFTs is that it's about culture, right? So having culture and influence in a certain area is what's going to provide the value. So Decentraland being the first mover is the place where the Bored Apes are. It's the place where Coinbase and all these different companies have plots. And as that builds up, Sandbox has Snoop Dogg and all these things happening. People are throwing parties in these two parts of the metaverse right now. Yeah. And so now what we're going to see is you're going to see more coming in, but it's going to be harder and harder for them to gain a market share because of the first movers having so much culture already invested into them. So you're going to have to be really good at a certain point in order for you to start taking pieces of that away, or, bringing your own, because, everybody's not even in the metaverse yet. So if you're able to bring your own community into your metaverse or your portion of the metaverse, then that'll be successful.
Or drive a new theme, a theme that is unique to your project. That's something that they can't do, because first movers have the opportunity to pull people in and establish roots, but also they become rigid and they can't flex the same way as other new opportunities can.
This is a perfect segue into Nifty Island, because everything that you guys just talked about, they had their alpha drop. I'll post in the comment section on the chat a tutorial on their Twitter of just the terraforming building strategy you can use, which this is them basically front running the space in a way when it comes to land and metaverse, in a way where you're not buying any land. You just need to log in, no pay to play. You have a generic character, you have your island, you can build your island however you would like to then, I was going to set something up, but I've been in talks since November, or part of the community, and before anything was even on the radar to even talk about. And they just came out, and it's been a blast and a success since just in the last 2 days. And what's ironic is they're not selling any land. It's infinite amount of land, but you just have an island for every person that comes in. And it's definitely twisting what we think as far as metaverses are on their head, because you can do way more in this metaverse versus even a crypto voxels, which is similar. It's not an 8-bit Nifty Island, but I'm just introducing the project here, and I would love to, which I've already talked with in game itself, the creator Charles, and maybe he'll be able to come on the podcast and talk about that narrative or that theme, which he's strong, which he's a big proponent of doing it differently when it comes to land sales, not having them at all, but still being appealing and basically a success in their creating a niche of their own within the metaverse of metaverses.
I'd love for you to be able to get him on. I like how you said twisting the current way we see the metaverse on its head, because I like that analogy, because I think we're going to see this happen several times. We're in an iteration phase,
right.
You know, so we're going to see the metaverse change drastically several times, probably within the next year, and definitely within the next 2 years.
I hope there's no end to that, because that's what I think the metaverse is. It's like it is now this sandbox for us exploring a new way of being. Anything that we can imagine, we now have a sandbox to see it play out. So I hope there's not this rigid metaverse that develops and this is just the way it is. I hope we continue to explore.
Yeah, and what's pretty interesting is that there's going to be a token associated with Nifty Island, but what generates your income is the foot traffic on your island. So yeah, you could say it's the same with any other metaverse, where the more sales happen in your store or your property or your parcel, then you reap the rewards from that. But this is it again. It's spinning this whole concept that we know of since we got involved with many of these projects, just copy and pasting the same land sales method. But if you'll earn more by having more foot traffic, which incentivizes people to stay. It was almost like MySpace when I was playing the game, the alpha, because you have to have one of the NFTs, and if not, you can try to get in with and we'll have a generic alien character. But you want to go to your friend's MySpace page to see what it looked like, right? You want to hang out there. There's music. There's different graphics that you can upload from a different website, and it's just a much more creative space, not needing to pay for anything either. That's the catch here, where we're so acclimated and indoctrinated to what's the land price? Like the first thing you ask is what's the price? What's the floor price for land, or how much is it going to cost? And that's not the case here. But I'm sure people probably thought that right out the gate. We're okay. Well, how much is it? Do I need land? What do I need? It's like we're being conditioned to need something, to get into something else, which allows us to get unlocked something else. And that model, which is the carrot on the stick model, and it works. It's all about the marketing, but it's a different
gaming.
It's an aspect of FOMO, because we're not even. It's kind of like when you go to sell, a car. If you ask what the price is first, like, well, you know what the car does? What's the utility?
Right.
So it's probably better to honestly, if someone would say, okay, what is the distinct difference between Decentraland and sandbox property? Like, what can you do with them? I couldn't really give a clear answer. I have some real basic stuff that I could probably share, but not anything really.
At this point, the differences would be very vague, right? It's really just the fact that they both have large communities at this point.
Well,
I like another great comment from Punjab. Google Glass is way ahead of their time. This reminded me because I'm part of Tom Bilyeu's project with the founders keys and whatnot, right? So he meets with us once a week, and he talks about certain things. And one of the things he talked about in a previous meeting was the ability for you to be walking around in the physical world with your, obviously you got your NFT. And so because of that, you're in a certain place and you're able to see things, obviously you use like a Google Glasses or something like that, but you'd be able to see things kind of like the Pokemon Go revolution, right? Mm-hmm. So you're in a certain place, you see something that nobody else sees because you're part of the Founders Key package. And so you're able to interact and show and prove that you have accomplished certain things within their community, but also within the metaverse that they're building. You know what I mean? So this is another aspect of how things are going to change. You have the physical part of the metaverse that people are going to be dealing with, as well as the individual digital metaverses.
That's what OVR is. That's what OVR is. To literally, you can buy, like right now, if I bought the pot in my front street, if someone was walking by with augmented reality glasses, I could create advertising. I could create an experience that they could interact with.
Well, let's take human nature into perspective here, because I love the idea of AR, but I absolutely could see the future where this is going to go. So now you've got somebody who's not politically expedient to a narrative. Somebody is going to buy the land in front of his house and dox him, or, put links to some nefarious thing within some AR thing. And I think it's going to create some legal issues for people whose property, physical property, is somehow being maligned by people buying it and using it against them. Maybe I just created a new sort of
Mind
social
blown.
online trolling.
You know what? All of those things have to play out. That's humans, man. We got to learn to get along and be nice to each other. And you're going to see all of that stuff play out. Like there was a piece of news. I didn't even share it just because, like, man, New York Post posted this thing where, like, Metaverse experiences its first gang rape, you know? And it's like, and so, and they were going into how Facebook's Meta is now implementing a personal space so that people can't come within your personal space. So all of these things that are a part of human nature, we're going to see them play out. Whether it's a person that wants to put up some signs to talk about their neighbor, put up images and put their neighbor's laundry in the street in an augmented reality way, all that stuff is going to happen. Hopefully, we just learn to be better humans and do less of that.
Well, I think you hit it on the head there, Jesse, because here's the thing. Prior to the invention of Bitcoin, we had no way of actually policing digital rights, right? So now via blockchain code, we're able to have property rights. And what you're talking about, Jesse, is even going further than that, being able to have actual laws that are coded into the blockchain. And this just goes back as well to the idea that these things are going to have to be decentralized in order for it to really work, because otherwise, like with Facebook, they can say you can't go in somebody else's space, but then they can come into your space. You know what I mean? So you're going to have those protections across the board in a decentralized form for it to really take off and cause the kind of revolution that I think we all think is coming.
I think the way that would have to play out is it's going to be platform specific. If you are the creator of a platform, then you will have to be able to dictate what can and can't happen on your platform. And if I'm walking down the street and I have augmented reality glasses on, I, as the user of these glasses, should have the ability to say which networks I actually utilize and tap into. So if there's a network that is just putting stuff out that I don't agree with, I can exclude that from what I actually see. So it gives you, the individual, some control over your experience, but then it also gives communities around individual projects the ability to say, here's what we stand for, what we tolerate, and what we don't.
Well, I think what we've seen, though, in the real world is, like you have, like, take television, for example. You have these different television channels, right, that are all producing programming. And what we've seen is that they've all been basically co-opted by central authority. And so you have the chance, if you allow for central control in any metaverse, you have the chance for them all to end up colluding or being co-opted in some form or fashion. And that's why I always take it back to decentralization. When all you have to trust is the code and all you have to trust is the blockchain, you're in a much stronger position than if you're trusting an individual or even a group of individuals. That always ends up, you're always going to have power creep in those kind of situations.
Well, I think you have to, I look at that a little bit differently. So you have to trust that the people who are making the smart contracts are trustworthy. You can't just blindly trust that, decentralization is going to make it all work, because there is some level of decision logic that sits behind the scenes that a human touched somewhere and has to be assessed. So, I mean, if we look at all the different places where people have been rugged over the past 6 months.
That goes to, like, auditing, though, and other people being, the thing about blockchain is the transparency. Other people can read the code. That's the beauty of, like, a Bitcoin, is that everybody can look at the code. I mean, you might not have the education level to do it yourself, or, like, I can't read Bitcoin code and see all the clauses, but there's enough people I trust that are able to do so, that I feel like it's a safe bet. And I think you would need to see a similar thing in these metaverse projects, where they have to start being more open about, or more transparent about, their code and their blockchains.
Yeah, agree.
If there are standards, at least for development, that work so that, let's say that these are AR augmented reality glasses. So then now on my phone, I can choose the networks that I participate in. So if there's a conglomerate that is just going to show me ads and stuff I don't want to see, that's not included in what I experience. But if there's some small decentralized group that is doing cool things, and that's the experience I want, the same way you can pick on what you want. If you don't want your cable box now and you go full internet content, you get to choose what you're exposed to. And I see the metaverse, and especially augmented reality content, working that same way, where you get to decide which networks content you consume.
I agree,
Absolutely.
Jess. That's it. We're voting with our attention and our dollars once again.
Yeah.
So continuing on to the document, I thought there was some other cool things here about the history of the metaverse. And what I'm noticing as I go through this document is they're really approaching it from a gaming perspective, right? They're not hitting it from some of the more abstract concepts and higher order concepts that we've been talking about. To me, it feels like they're communicating to people who invest in gaming projects. What stands behind that assertion is their timeline here, right? It starts with Second Life and it ends with Snoop Dogg's Sandbox estate. So it doesn't talk about the world of finance getting into the metaverse or some of these high-end brands getting into the metaverse that we're seeing. It's much more oriented towards gaming, which resonates with me because that's why I'm here for the most part.
Well, the last thing on the timeline is actually Microsoft announced its plans to acquire Activision Blizzard. Mm-hmm. So that is an instance of big money coming in for Metaverse play. Mm-hmm. And, that's where we're at now, the acquisition phase.
So go ahead, Bonafide.
Well, I was just going to comment that that's really interesting because one, if there's a gaming company that has a lot of history with economic models, it's Blizzard and how those function in the game. So it's an interesting thing.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this document is when I got to the end, specifically comes the big sell, right? So JPM is positioning whatever technology they have as the company that's going to run the back end of all of this. So it's really interesting that most of this leads into a sales opportunity for them, for opportunities in the metaverse. And
of course,
they've got the verticals they're going to focus on that all include using their back end solution.
Well, here's an interesting question. In the same document, and this kind of blew my mind, really, that the GDP for Second Life last year in 2021 was $650 million, with nearly 80 million of that in US dollars paid to creators. Mm-hmm. But yet when we also scroll down, we see them listed as Web 2.0. So this is an interesting question of being an early adopter. They were first to market to create this kind of a world where they had that much ongoing activity, where people were literally making a living in this world. So now that they're 2.0, do they have the ability to become 3.0, or do they have to sit exactly where they are, like Steam taking a position saying, hey, we're not blockchain, we're going to live in the old world, we're going to ride this till the wheels fall off? Or is that what Second Life was going to do? Or can they now say, look, we got to be forward thinking, and how do we adapt what we've created into the metaverse and Web 3.0, or do they just stay right where they're at? And that's one of the challenges of being first to market, and you have all that to reward you, but it's hard to shift later when new technology comes available.
I think it's like you said, Jesse, it's hard. It's going to be hard for a lot of these companies to shift because they got to learn crypto and blockchain in order to make the shift. And so it's easier for something like a Decentraland to adopt Second Life mechanics than it is for Second Life to become a better version of Decentraland using their own game history.
Yeah,
I'd say the same goes for NFC projects, like gaming specifically, where Axie probably led the way and didn't do what other projects are doing now, but it's still so early in the space where they can turn it around. So that's the beauty of just the space that we're in, because a lot of people are going to projects where they're doing it right versus the project they're coming from. But then at the end of the day, in my opinion, I think everyone comes back to that original project, because who would you place your bet on in the space long term? Those newly popped up projects that are just here where you could turn profit much faster than Axie, versus when you were able to do that back in the day with Axie. They have more money. It just makes sense that they're going to be the anchor in their own right for in the space. And it doesn't make sense that everyone's jumping to get diversified into 5 other projects. If you're going to make money, sure, I don't care what you do, but all roads are going to lead back to these games who've been in the space building, having that head start, and having enough money to do everything that these other projects are going to do with a smaller team that they just tweaked right. I don't know, my opinion.
Yeah, I like it, Ray. Shout out to Rob Megan again with another great comment. Second Life's community may hate Web 3.0 or anything that has to do with crypto. This got me thinking, because we're all gamers. We understand gamer loyalty, right? And so you got people who refuse to leave World of Warcraft when there were better MMOs out there, you know, and you have people who refuse to leave other games. Ray is an Axie guy, you know. You tend to be loyal as a gamer to certain games and certain genres. And so as we see this shift from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0, I think that's going to cause a lot of delays and a lot of gamers coming over. I think a lot of them will stick to Second Life and ride that till the wheels fall off, as you said, Jesse, as opposed to coming over to the new hot thing in Web 3. I think there's going to be a bit of a lag there.
If it meets your needs, there's no reason to jump ship. You know,
Right.
As humans, we kind of are adverse to change because, you know, and you know, if we look back in our DNA from the time we came from caves, change represented a lot of risk. And so we're adverse to a lot of change. So if something isn't broken, then you don't look to fix it. Or even if something is broken, you know, the saying, sometimes it's better to dance with the devil you know than the devil you don't, because at least you know what you're getting. So there are going to be lots of people that are rooted in these games that we consider an older model, but as long as they're happy, stick with it.
You know, on the topic of Second Life, the original founders back doing some work. I'm not sure if they're moving into the metaverse space, but you know, I think it's about 2 decades old now, if that, or at least a decade old.
Yeah.
Already has an established economy, already has creators. So if you think about what the metaverse could turn into, like a sandbox or Decentraland, it's very easy to look at Second Life and say this is Second Life 2.0.
Yeah, they were prior to 2010, well prior to 2010, Banjo, Second Life.
And what's fascinating to me about that is that I think I logged in like once ever, and I don't know a whole lot about it. And when you think that they have this $650 million a year going through there, and there's content creators that are creating content, and someone that's a gamer, someone that's tech savvy, and it's just not even on my radar. It just kind of blows my mind how successful it has become, and how other projects in the future will do something similar that we won't even know about for the longest time, but it'll have a cult following.
Yeah, last time I got into it or looked at it was probably around 2013 or 14, and it was well, I know I joke about this a lot, but it was porn everywhere. That's all I really saw was porn. And it just wasn't interesting to me. I wanted to play a game, not look at porn. I'd rather see that stuff in real life.
That's not the Second Life you were looking for?
No, not the second. I've got that in my first life. All right. So on that topic,
yeah, that kind of pivots us into like the last thing on the Metaverse news we have, and that is a commercial from the Super Bowl. It's the one we found like the funniest or like most entertainment, and it's FTX.
Was it the most relevant to the space as well?
Well, the Coinbase one got a lot of praise as well. It was like a code on the screen that you could scan, and but the website wasn't powerful enough to like handle loads of people doing it at once, so it went down.
They shut
Oh yeah, I read
down.
that.
That's
like
hilarious.
Like a QR code that went to a 404 page or something like that.
I did it. I tried. I stood up and got my camera out and figured out where it was going.
Wow. All right.
So yeah, this is Don't Miss Out on Crypto.
I call it the wheel.
I don't think so. What does it do?
It rolls.
Yeah, so does a bagel, okay? A bagel you can eat. One of the worst ideas I've ever heard.
Brother David, behold, it's a fork. I got 10 forks right here, baby. Am I right?
My lord?
What is it?
A toilet, my lord.
A toilet? You expect this court to do its business inside? We're not animals. We go outside like humans.
It's coffee. It's new.
Oh, it's awful.
You don't like it?
I'm all jittery and feel like I got a big job coming on.
Hancock, you sign first.
No king! Gentlemen, have you taken leave of your senses?
The people shall have the right to vote.
Even the stupid ones?
Yes.
Stupid people vote?
Yes.
Ha!
Edison, can I be honest with you? It stinks. Does your wife know what's going on here?
She knows I go to work.
You're wasting your time, and it's sad. You might as well put the dishes in the shower.
Hey, Catherine, what's cooking? We're putting a man on the moon. Are you out of your mind? I can't even get tuna without celery. Nobody's gone to the moon, ever.
Why not?
It's too far. It's far. It's really far. It's far.
我々の未来はポータブルミュージックです。
バカかバカかわかるだろうわかるだろうわかるだろう出て行け見ないのか怖いんだああまた2回言っても言えるぞまたどこ懐かしい
Like I was saying, it's FTX. It's a safe and easy way to get into crypto.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I'm never wrong about this stuff. Never. Franklin! Hey, I left my cane in there. What? What do you mean? Hey, that's an expensive cane!
That was good. That was good.
Superb.
That commercial epitomizes me and Bitcoin in 2013.
Oh yeah,
Hilarious.
yeah. I was laughed at quite a bit, Banjo.
The beauty of that is that you're sitting next to your family members during the Super Bowl, and there's the person next to you who might be Larry, till this day while they were watching the Super Bowl, and it just kind of brings up that topic of conversation. Like, look, I told you so, from the kid's perspective, or vice versa, depending on who just believes it's going to be a thing or not. So that's hilarious.
Yeah, I actually got a nice crypto and Bitcoin debate a few days ago at work. This is a guy who was there with me in 2017, and I was telling him about Bitcoin, and he's like Peter Schiff in a way, you know, a rich guy that's still bashing Bitcoin and crypto.
Whew. Yeah, man, it's insane how many years it's going to take for mass adoption. You know, like, there's all this talk about adoption, but look at any other revolutionary thing that happened, like cell phones or credit cards, and then the risk of like your identity being stolen, and like the propaganda from the media that dictates what you should do or not do in the beginning stages of all this. Even when the internet came out, it's just like formulate your own opinion by trying it out. Just like we talked about earlier, you're gonna get burned. Maybe you might do something the wrong way, but you'll learn. And majority of people are gonna fail and then bounce back and stick around. Do
you know what I think that it is? I mean, for anyone that's in the know, you look at crypto, you look at blockchain, and you immediately see, this solves so many things, like whether that it's shipping, whether it's music, whether it's concert tickets, whether it's voting systems, no matter what it is, there's so many things that blockchain can solve. The challenge is that we're in the development stage right now. And a good example of that was last week or the week before when we were looking at the categories within CoinGecko, where you can see that all the top projects are the ecosystems and the platforms and the tools and the utilities. We're laying the foundation. It's like the roads and the piping and the electrical. And then now what you're starting to see climb are the things that are easily accessible, the things that people are using, whether it's gaming, GameFi stuff, Metaverse stuff, projects that sports, music. And then as people start to see it show up in valuable places in their life, then it starts to have meaning and they can understand it and they can wrap their head around it. Right now, there's not enough of that for the average person to wrap their head around and see where the value is in their everyday life. The more they can see that, then we'll just start to see a flood of the on-ramp.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah. And not only that, but right quick, not only that, just, but you hit it on the head too, as far as like the safety of it all too. I just did a Twitter post a little bit earlier where a guy was talking about it's like we're cars before seatbelts right now, you know, and he was talking about the OpenSea thing and, you know, all those people losing their NFTs and all that, you know, I mean, it's dangerous out here as well because the infrastructure for our safety and the system of laws and whatnot isn't there yet either. It's all being built.
Yeah. I'm old enough to wear one of my parents' arms. That was a seatbelt.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm almost there. I'm like right after that.
Yeah. Same here. But what I was going to say was I wrote it down. Yeah. So the ground level, like Jess was saying, is the riskiest level. And that's where you would want to position yourself. But again, what's your the risk to reward and then your own personal risk levels? A lot of people don't get in at the ground level. It's only until majority of everything or anyone is a commonplace or has adopted the technology. So if you want major success, you're gonna have to be much more riskier than or much more risky than you are now. And there you go. Like, and what's the differentiator between someone losing it all or making a pretty handsome, payback is the education, the time spent to learn what's going on, to do your due diligence, and it's just the time you have to invest to then reap the rewards from those investments on the ground level.
I think you have to have the foresight or the ability to look beyond the current narrative of what's happening around you to say, like, what could be useful beyond that? Because if you're stuck only seeing what is happening right in front of your face right now, you're never going to catch any trend. You're never going to position yourself for big growth opportunities.
That's why that commercial. That's why I love that commercial so much. Because it's spot on. He did that so well.
Mm-hmm. Not financial advice. None of this is financial.
and not only that, also, but you also have room for the other side of the coin, which is like J.P. Morgan now is giving everybody Web 2.0 versus Web 3.0 advice. But you take them back, I think, as small as 2 years ago, they were still bashing crypto and Bitcoin, right? So, I mean, what a switch they've made. And this,
that was them saying, I got 10 forks right here, baby.
and while they were saying I got 10 forks right here, baby, they were quietly amassing all the resources to build forks. You know what I mean? And that's their perspective, and that's why, I didn't even want to like the article, even though it's a great article.
That's the JP Morgan way. You talk bad about something until you're ready to make money off of it.
Until they have enough of the market share,
Well, I think that covers the Metaverse news. Before we flip into Star Atlas, is there anything that we want to bring up that you guys have seen that we haven't talked about?
I don't think so. You guys for that are listening in, you want some Star Atlas Alpha?
Oh,
Star Atlas
here we
Alpha.
go.
Please, sir.
This week we have lined up an interview. We haven't. It's most likely going to be pre-recorded, and then we'll actually share it and discuss it live, either on the next show or the one thereafter. But we've got an interview lined up with CEO Michael Wagner of Star Atlas, so should be a good show. So you guys are the first to hear this.
I think it'd be neat, Jesse, and we don't have to read them off here, but if some people just put some questions in the chat, Wagner's been interviewed ad nauseum at this point.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have heard the same things, but what have you heard or what have you wanted to know that you haven't heard? And maybe we'll try to roll some of those questions in, and we'll just keep track. We're not going to bring them up on the screen, but it'll be a good time, I'm sure.
Yeah, consider joining, even if you're not a part of Rome as a citizen, but consider joining Rome, because that's where we're going to harvest the most of the questions. So you can hop in there and join the chat, which all the questions would be written in the Star Atlas channel.
Not only that, but that's where we were sharing all the alpha on the OpenSea fiasco and all that kind of stuff as well. So it's just a good place to be in general. I learned that's where I get my learning from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, Fancy, what do we got then for Star Atlas?
So this week they did a couple polls, and that was to decide which ships they want to drop. And yeah, there was some clear winners for each category. Here is the extra small. So the environmental friendly fighter, that won over what we know is the Thimble Lobby. Yeah.
Have we heard anything about the environmentally friendly fighter other than we can assume it's an eco ship, right?
Yeah, well, in one of these pictures, you can actually see like an extra small, or what looks like an extra small ship below the Bombarella. And then there's Grenadier for reference as well in the corner, in the top.
What might be deceiving on that last image is scale. So in other words, the images are equal in size, but do we have anything that confirms that the ships are the same size, or is it just the shape that we're looking at there as a point of reference?
I think extra small, that's around 3 meters, something like that, lengthwise. So it's called the Unabomber as well. And
I just noticed in this image here that there's the little herd of, I don't know what you call a herd of ostrich, but there's a herd of ostrich on the ground there.
A flock. I think we've confirmed Australia is one of the Earth is one of the planets now, right? So do you think what's that in the back there though? I'm looking at that. That doesn't look like any of these other ships, does it?
Yeah, I think so. It's that one with that flat with the big end. I don't know if we have it here, but it's that more circular, rounded one. I think that's what it is.
I think it's the Bombarella, just like from front view, you can see like
okay.
the
Yeah,
from
I think you're
the
right.
top.
Oh,
Yeah, I was
Kind of looks
looking
like
at
an
a different
Empire
angle.
Strikes Back ship,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Okay.
But,
Good point.
yeah, they also
so
did
this
a
eco-friendly fighter, Fancy. Before you move on, I mean, are they shooting flowers or, because I mean that's the line's claim, right? Is that like they're bombing things and it's eco, what do they call it? Terraforming the planet. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we know it's called the Unabomber, and
What an inappropriate name.
Right.
yeah, this was the thing I was looking for. So the Thimble Ecos Unibomber and the one that is a small.
That's hilarious,
ship,
Stylus.
that was the Ogrika Mick, and this is what won.
So what's interesting about these ships there, so imagine that from a strategic value that if it's small, chances are it can be stealthy. And if it is truly a bomber, then that means that you could, it's probably going to be low cost also if it's going to be small, but let's say you can only load 1 or 2 bombs on it. You get a fleet of these low cost, small, extra small bombers, and a bomb by itself, by nature, usually does a lot of destructive damage. So you could really take out a facility or some land or whatever your target is more strategically than you could with a big bomber showing up, you would think.
I wonder if the Unabomber comes with its own manifest that gets delivered after it bombs something.
It would be
For
cool.
those
to
who may not
Small
understand
platform in
the
the
jokes,
woods.
I know there's people from outside of the U.S. who watch this. So the Unabomber was a political bomber that lived very rural and was not caught for many years. That's where the joke is, right?
And his silhouette was a dude that wore a hood.
Like Bonafide.
Yeah.
Bonafide's a Unabomber.
I haven't used that one in a while, but we still got it.
So one other interesting thing to come from the polls is the descriptions it gave on the small poll, which was carried out on Twitter. So you can see, like, number 1, it was labeled as press X for emergency. So I imagine there could be some like ejector seat that has like a parachute, perhaps. That's what immediately jumps to my mind.
I think, well, first off, besides the top ship looking like a Klingon vessel, to me, Prex X for emergency might be related to first aid, right? Maybe this is a ship that comes in and does something.
Yeah, it could be. I'm imagining it kind of gives me like something out of Avatar vibe, but I'm not really sure.
Interesting. So they're saying that these are 3 small size ships measuring up to 55 meters. As a point of reference, SpaceX's new BFR spaceship, the one that they're building that's supposed to be like a 100-person spaceship, it's at 180 feet, 55 meters.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Well, that's not very small.
It doesn't seem small.
So any thoughts on Thrilling Ride, what that might be?
Well, it seems perhaps like a single fighter, perhaps just like completely geared towards combat and like maneuverability.
You think it might be a racer?
No idea, really.
Yeah, I think it might. If it's thrilling, that means you might die, or something about that says thrilling, as in you got to be careful, but you'll have a good time if you come out safe on the other side.
Like no brakes, like a bike with no brakes, right?
Possibly.
I always thought number 2 kind of looks like the Star Atlas logo, just on its side.
One thing that's hard to determine in all 3 of them is what's the orientation, what's the front and what's the back.
Right.
One of the value that I see in having a large assortment of small and extra small ships is that as Star Atlas builds out. The experience is going in layers. We've got Kareem, so we're going to have crafting and things like that. And then, we've got the showroom coming up. And so there's lots of questions as to whether the showroom is going to be an experience for an individual or if it's going to be something that you and your guild and buddies can show up and interact in. But when you are in the showroom, you are going to be able to go into a ship and explore it and check it out. So I would imagine that between that stage and the time where you can actually be out exploring space, one of the accessible things they could do in between is racing. And so if you are able to create a couple of courses that your small and extra small ships like this here could take advantage of, that becomes a layer that they can add into Star Atlas that doesn't have to be this big, huge open world thing, but allows you to have another level of engagement. So I definitely see that being a reason to have a plethora of extra small and small ships.
Yeah, and making it terrestrial would allow for more boundaries as well, right? I mean, you can, if it's space, you're going to have this weird boundary. But if you do it on a terrestrial plot of land, you can build the boundaries out of the terrain, right?
Right.
So what did you guys go back to that picture, Fancy? Sorry, man.
No problem.
Just based on the shape of the ships, are you guys interested in any particular one, or are you just going to wait and see?
I don't think there's any room in my arsenal and my fleet of ships at this point, unless the ship comes out with some particular utility. At this point, I'm no longer like a ship collector. I feel like I have the categories of freight and repair. I don't have any rescue. I don't really have any bounty. And I've got ships all the way up to capital. But I don't now, unless there's a ship that has some really clear utility, or unless there's interesting ones like the Fimble, that hoopty. I could see having that. But some of the other ones, unless any of these have any particular utility, then I'm not in a hurry to grab them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I bought my ships with utility and play style in mind originally. And now, like the Lobie with that one coming out, that's purely aesthetic that I'm buying that for, because I love the way it looks. But and as far as some of the other ships, now I'll just be rounding out some of the play style. Like I'd love to have a small bomber. I think that would be fun. I didn't plan on buying an air bike, but now I have 3. So I mean, there's going to be those one-offs that you don't expect that you're going to shell out money for, and then all of a sudden there it is.
Yeah,
I was never really expecting to go. Go ahead, Ray.
No, I was going to say the collector in me is going to purchase all 3 of them. But on the other end, whichever one isn't going to be able to be built by our faction, that might take a long ways of traveling to get those resources to then purchase. To then build out that ship. I might just pick up for that reason alone, like the Tufa. In medium space, you'd have to go get those ingredients or those materials to then craft the Tufa. So if you can buy one now, and skip over all that to focus on other goals of your guild, and I think that would be a smart thing to do, in my opinion.
Isn't Tufa high risk only, I believe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were saying
Yeah.
So so I'm just I just like
a rainbow.
I'm just gonna get them.
I'm kind of split on it, because I'm like you, Jesse. I'm kind of more interested in land and stuff at this point, but the idea. I was never really interested in the extra small ships in the first place, but the idea of a small fleet of extra small bombers makes a lot of sense to me. So, we'll see.
Yeah. Also, what comes to mind? Sorry, but also what comes to mind is any of the ship missions that require a specific ship. You won't be able to take part in those types of missions. Is it by particular ship, or is it by the class of ship? Is it a racer versus freight? Like how are they going to go about that? Maybe there's specific ship missions for a specific ship, no matter if it's a freight or a racer, or maybe by size as well. There's certain ships that ship missions you can only accomplish if you have that size ship.
Well, there might be some utility to some of these ships that we aren't anticipating. So another reason to get the Unabomber, in my perspective, also depends on the ability to terraform. So if you take over a piece of land that needs to be terraformed, you have something you can go through really quickly, or maybe not go quickly through, and just do it yourself instead of waiting for somebody to have to come through and do it for you. So there might be some war-based use for some of these ships.
And some immediately obvious utility, because as we all know from previous games, the meta is going to shift in interesting ways once we start having gameplay. So
Yeah, I want to see
to war.
I want to see one of those Fimbles all doctored up like one of those VW hippie buses, and that just goes around like planting love bombs that terraform the land.
Well, I think Tree plans on doing that, right?
I think so.
That...
What's up, Bodie?
Let me answer Kevin's question quickly. You can manage as many ships as you want in this stage. I've seen people with like thousands of extra smalls, but they're like in like the very, very long term, it might be more beneficial to have like one ship instead of like a fleet, just for simplicity's sake. Or there may be some type of buff if it's player controlled. That's something that's still quite far off, but it's up to you what you get.
If you have the budget for 100 X4s, you probably want to consider spreading that around to some of the other ships, just because, again, right now all you can do is stake them, and it's easy to control and stake them. We don't know what a rental model will look like in the future, and if you don't plan on or have a way to utilize 100 of them yourself, all you can really do with them now is stake them. But the staking them of the smaller ships requires a considerably larger amount of maintenance, meaning like on a daily basis, you better be in there. Otherwise, you're going to log in. If you miss a time, you're going to see 0, and it's not earning you anything. So you have to stay on top of maintenance on the smaller ships.
Yeah, it's like Pavlov's dog, right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing to me what worries me the most about the extra smalls is, like, I've gotten to that point once with my jets where I wasn't earning on them because life or whatever. So
I'm curious. So, like, do we think? Let's say the metaverse is up and running, Star Atlas is going, and we're at our base, and we're trying to get from point A to point B. Most economical way that you want to get there. Do you jump on your X4 and get there? Is it the most economical, like we think in terms of a motorcycle today, going from point A to point B? Or is there also the issue of it's going to take you a lot longer because if you get in your ohm, which costs a bit more, but it's faster and it gets you there. So, I mean, will those be some of the considerations for just traveling from the distance?
I'm taking my ohm because I'm living in the lap of luxury.
There was a cool Solana video, and I don't know if we have it loaded up, that Star Atlas was a part of, and they had the Amway materializing out of nowhere, and it looks so cool. So I'm just looking forward to what the in-game perspective is going to look like when they finally get there with Unreal 5.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that it's these 2 ships, Map 1 and full reveal is going to be coming soon, and looking forward to that.
That's great. So the Ogrica and the Fimble.
Yes, Ogrica Mick and Fimble Unabomber.
Now,
do you guys remember who manufactures the Ogrica? How do you get those parts? Do you remember?
I believe that's the Punab, so the little people.
Okay.
I think that's the kindest way to put it.
But Ogrica is a mud ONI faction, right? Or is it?
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, I was wrong. It's a Ooster ONI.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
And what do you guys think the price point is going to be? These are ships that were, their peers that have come out already are already kind of pricey.
Yeah, it might be similar type of price with a higher supply, like the Fimble Air Bike was, or maybe they just wanted to get like a metric butt ton of them out before people could buy them all again.
Yeah, they've been handing out the air bikes left and right as prizes, so which is great because it's spreading the resource and getting more people out there into the space. But I'm curious to see if they're going to go with a higher end or a higher cost ship at this point.
Right. What is the growth size recently for Star Atlas as a project? Their Twitter is about 300,000 now or something like that. Which, by the way, their very first, I noticed this the other day, their very first Medium post when they were talking about their different social properties was 3,000. So within a year, they've 100x'd the size of their Twitter space. What about the Discord channel? Do we know what the size is there?
They're at
156.
156. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I only use that as a point of reference because I can imagine that as they release new ships, especially small and extra small, which are going to be the most accessible for a person to be able to buy. Let's say, hey, I've got $15. I want to get in and check out Star Atlas. I can at least jump on this bike and cruise around. And so, yeah, as the community grows in size, I can see there being a reason to have releases of these first accessible ships, small and extra small, that increase in the supply.
Yeah, they did say they want 500,000, their goal at the end of the year. Members. So
Yeah.
it's going to help.
So there wasn't much on the roadmap report this week. Just a lot of ongoing and updates. Yeah, looking forward to the next one. They can't all be interesting.
Right. Did anyone jump on? I haven't, and I haven't listened in. Did anyone jump on that last town hall where it was just kind of an internal, hey, here's what's happening within Star Atlas. Here's how we're growing. I think it had their human resources person on. And so it's like, hey, if you're a community member looking to submit an app or a resume or something, you could do that. Did anyone jump on that one? Because I didn't.
Yeah,
I listened to it.
Oh, good.
I'll be honest with you, and this is my personal opinion. I'm not a big fan of the town halls where it's updates about each platform, like the legal updates and the human resources updates. I think it's good because it helps you understand how the company is growing. But those town halls to me are for information about the game. That's what I go there for. I mean, I'm always going to listen to them because I love the project, but I get more out of the Chipto and Bunthius and all them talking about the intricacies of the game.
Yeah.
I wasn't on it, but the thing that I like about them sharing that information, for me, I spent a lot more time on seeing who I'm connected to with my past lives on LinkedIn and who is now joining the team at Star Atlas. That's kind of how I can see, that's my lens into, wow, these guys are forward thinking. This is not just a project where they're looking to, make some moves in the next year. They're literally looking way out into the next decade. And so they're doing and showing things transparently, even though it may not be of interest to all of us, but at least they're showing signs of a company that is building something that has long legs.
Yep. I forgot what I was going to say, but we can move on.
There was also the leaderboards are working still, and that's really awesome. Not much movement this week, but yeah. I'm looking forward to when all these bigger ships start getting released. There's going to be certain types of roles like data runner and refueling and repairing that are still attractive to people who even were at the first Gal Sales Galactic asset offering.
Yeah, what's really on my mind, we're waiting for Polis staking, obviously. And I think just based on what I'm reading, the people who are doing Polis as an investment might be a little bit underwhelmed. Yeah. With the direction that goes. So in my mind, then we're looking towards cream and land. And I'm leaning more into the land side of it all. But I'm still slowly, I move everything that I get from my Atlas distributions from my ships into Polis for the time being.
I think that's a great thing to do now. I think that the reason it's a little underwhelming to understand that we may be less than excited about what happens with the Polis staking is because of those of us that have been Polis supporters early on, we're pretty heavily upside down in what we put into Polis. So if you're just now getting into Polis, it's a beautiful thing because it can only go up from here.
Yeah. The price of Polis is very attractive right now. And I think this is one of the few cases where I would genuinely say Polis is something you invest in if you want to get involved in the ecosystem and not make a return. Right, where we kind of hammered Gala earlier today about what it means to invest. But I think that Polis, if they do it right, I think it should be less about making the fat return. Otherwise, it's just going to be people chasing it for a return and not using it for the mechanics of the game.
Yeah, I think governance tokens as a whole, the way that I've grown to look at the two different economies of in-game tokens versus governance token. Governance token is support of a project and being the early risk takers alongside the developers for potential long-term reward. So if you really like the concept that's being developed and you want to support the project, governance is the way to do it. The in-game is where you're hopefully going to make some return as a play-to-earn gamer.
Agree. Fancy, what else you got, man?
So, and with the roadmap this week, we also got this another Unreal Engine 5 leak of the PSX4.
That's sexy.
We did get quite a long video a while back about PSX4 in the Unreal 5 engine, and it does look very clean still.
It's interesting, and they have that listed as a Pierce Police X4 as well, so we could potentially see NPCs using those things. The thing that's always surprised me about that one is that you see right there, you've got this piece of glass that pops up in the front. Now, I'm assuming like it's not to, it's as a wind brace or anything like that, especially if you're in space. So is somehow engaging a heads-up display of some sort? Like, what is that?
That's my take, Jesse. I mean, if you look at the cars, one of my cars has that in its windshield. And once you get used to it, you love it.
Right.
But that's what I see it as heads up.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, though. I think what I'm cautiously optimistic about is they're doing a great job with the ships, but if they have avatars that don't look as crisp and lifelike, it could take away from some of it, right? So I hope the character animations are as polished as what we're seeing here. Yeah, that's great. They've been showing in Foundation Room a lot of the internal workings of different ships, and I'm amazed at how many different components that they share as a work in progress that most people will never even bat an eye at.
Yeah.
So you got an X4 police vehicle. And my question is like, what exactly are they enforcing? I mean, if I'm in anything larger, am I really going to pull over?
They needed. That's what the air bike is for, right? They finally have an antagonist for the X4, the air bike.
It'll be GTA style where you get more stars as you ignore and continue to do what you want. 5, 6 stars, you get the helicopters and tanks.
Got warnings in every sector.
Fancy, it looked like you were scrolling through some other stuff there. Do you have something?
Yeah, we can also show your version of this map. Yeah, they are going to be releasing a more clearer version, so take this one with like a grain of salt, and that one's going to be coming with like more information as well, so that's going to be good.
Yeah, so there's a couple different versions of this out there, and where this came from is in Foundation, they posted a very rough sketch of what they were thinking about as it relates to safe zone, medium zone, and high risk zone. And they asked for people to create their own version. So I created this one, and there's some better ones out there. This is PowerPoint, essentially. But what I thought was interesting about this that I never had conceptualized is that the Cataclysm is its own sector of high risk zone, right?
Right.
So, and I never saw high risk zone as different sectors, but the way they're laying it out rather is implies that there's going to be some territorial conquest stuff going on here.
So one of the things that came to me as an interesting idea that I plan on doing is I was trying to think of how can I actually visualize this in a 3D space, and I came up with the perfect freaking way to do this. Any of you guys have an Oculus?
No,
I do not.
Okay. So their Oculus is like, I don't know what, $500-$600, something like that. One of the programs that I've been using in there for a long time, even when I had the HTC Vive before, is Tilt Brush by Google. And it's a way you can paint in a 3D environment. So you could literally create this and totally walk around it and kind of get a feel for what this would be in a 3D space. So
yeah,
it would be a pretty cool way to experience it.
I tried laying it out in like an online vector program that allowed you to do that, but I just didn't have the skill set quick enough to get it out. But it does make it, once you understand it in a 3D space, it completely opens up what we're about to experience, with the different zones. And what I think this highlights for a lot of people who may not have understood it initially is you do have to travel through deep space and the high risk zone to get to another medium zone. if you're going to
Yeah.
be using those faction passes. So there's going to be risk for $4,000 pack lights that are traveling from one zone to another.
You know what I think some people haven't considered when you look at this map right here. When you think in terms of conflict, you see the Cataclysm in the center, you see Mud, Euster, and Oni, and you see these medium zones, and of course you see their safe zone. Well, another consideration is that on the backside, if you're not just focused on the Cataclysm, even on the backside of these safe zones, you have medium and and deep space. And so while you may think of the protagonist or as being someone from a different faction, once you go into the medium zone and even into deep space on the backside of your faction, you still have to contend with other people within your faction. So if you piss off your neighbor, they're like, yeah, you can talk all that good stuff here in the safe zone. Wait till you go out in the medium, and definitely wait till you go out in deep space, because it's not just you're contending with other factions. It's going to be the relations you have with the people in your own faction.
And it's not every faction facing inward towards the Cataclysm. I know the game is kind of structured that way, but I mean, if you want to be a safer resource gatherer, you go away from the Cataclysm, right?
Right.
You go someplace that's farther out in deep space. The question will be, how far can you go initially and stay safe? The other thing that I learned through this process is that the Cataclysm is a gravitational anomaly, right? And it's going to have different physics involved in it. So what we might be doing as a strategy in safe zone or medium space, or even some of the high risk space, may have some rule sets that change in the Cataclysm because of that, which I think is great.
You mean like gravitational anomalies and things like, I mean, just things that change the dynamics of play? Yeah.
So maybe something that you have a ship that's geared towards a certain type of flight, when it hits the Cataclysm and reaches other laws of physics that have changed, maybe your strategy doesn't work, or maybe you need a different build out in your ship. Chipto posted a link, or maybe it was Bunthius, posted a link, and I reposted it on Twitter around what a gravitational anomaly is, and this is tied into real astrophysics, right?
Yeah, that is exciting. The other thing too that I think we can expect is that early on there's going to be boundary conditions. So you just won't be able to just travel into endless space. You're going to bump up against some borders, some boundaries as they roll this out. So that's the other thing too that we have to keep in mind. It's easy for our imagination to do what ifs and like what would be amazing and exciting to experience. But when it comes to building it out, remember, they're building out on technology that's still in beta. There's a lot of technology that's going to be required at the end stages of building this out fully that aren't even active and developed yet. So there'll be times where, you're just going to play with inside this one boundary condition. That's why I used racing as an example. I think there'll be a stage where we'll be able to engage the game through racing. And then another time we'll be able to run missions, but only to this world and this section of the metaverse that is Star Atlas.
Yeah, they implied that there's going to be some very limited PvP interaction, not within the high risk zone, but even within the safe or the medium zone. And I think that's important because it allows them to help test what's really going to happen when we get farther into the end of the game. So I like the idea of doing safe zone as a release, then medium zone, and continuing to layer in the game loops that they're doing. I think it's a great model.
And who knows what's going to happen with the limitations of transactions. Like right now, I've seen different stuff over the past year, from 50,000 transactions on Solana to where now projected they're trying to bump that up a bit more. But those are some of the limits that we'll bump up against for some time, and we don't know what that will look like. There could be scenarios where gameplay is prevented simply because you can't have too many people in a specific region because the transactions don't support what is happening there.
Yeah, and this is why I think that the game company or the development team that nails this is going to make more money in the long run by licensing their technology than the actual game. So, and it's something that I'd like to address with Wagner when we do that interview is, you're building something that's no one else has done. There's value in that project, and people applying their own project on top of your back end. Why wouldn't you license out the technology? Look at Unreal 5. They're the underpinning of many, many great games that have nothing to do with the company that makes it.
Right.
I think that's all we have for Star Atlas stuff. I do think it's a great time to mention, before we move into anything else, that we do have some exciting news about a peer podcast that is launched. We have our Legion, our Hispanic Legion, that has launched their own podcast that is Spanish speaking. And I think it's called Hispanic Nomads. Is that right? Am I getting that correctly?
Yeah, you can find them on Twitch, and we'll be posting that link in our Discord.
Yeah,
Cool.
I think it's fantastic. I think the idea that we have someone, a group within the guild that want to replicate what we're doing here for people who speak a different language is fantastic. I think it's awesome. So good luck,
agree.
guys, and congratulations on the start of your project.
Indeed.
Yes, good luck, fellas.
So what else do we got? I know that we kind of had some opportunity to talk about Axie. I don't think there's much that we can talk about there. Illuvium, there's not much to talk
What are you talking about? I got a whole slideshow, baby.
Oh, do you really? I didn't know you had something, Ray. Why don't we push into Axie? My apologies.
no worries. And
There's
before we jump
always
into
Axie news.
Yeah, and before we jump into Axie, I wanted to find out from the folks that are listening. We got a good group of people that are on right now live, and those of you that are catching the replay. About a couple weeks ago, I started diving into Peg Axie, and Peg Axie is a Pegasus style mechanical race game that is basically tried to leverage everything that has been learned from the pioneers that are Axie. And it's been an interesting journey, and I've learned a lot in the past 2 weeks. So if that's something you guys are interested in hearing about, I'd be happy to be transparent and kind of show my journey of like, here's what I put in, here's what I'm doing with scholars, here's what my experience has been. And I think there's value in it because we do have the first movers that come to the space like Axie, and then there's the projects that learn from it and what can they do to further what's happening in the space where they can move and pivot a little bit with a little bit more flexibility because they're not married to previous things stakes that they put in the ground. So if that's of any value to you guys, I'd be happy to share kind of what I've learned along the way.
So what
I
is the
personally
floor,
think it would be
Jesse?
valuable for you to put something together, Jess.
Yeah, just for the record, we have the DeFi Kingdoms and Peg Axie channels open in our Discord, so we can always take the conversations there amongst yourselves and with the council members, if for whoever is involved, and like Jess, and you could share resources and things there. So that's also something to know about.
Cool. And what is the floor for Peg Axie? Let's say you Bear Brutes.
It's dropping now. Version Peg Axies are under $1,000 right now. But they're doing some really, really super creative stuff with how you control floor prices and how you control token prices through burn and in-game mechanics. That's the part that I'm super fascinated about with this project. I think there's sharp people behind it, and I think they're doing some pretty cool pivots to sustain the longevity of this project. But floor right now to get started, if you're breeding, is going to be under 1,000, and less than that if you're just looking to get into race.
So maybe what I'll do, and we can talk offline, maybe I'll just get in at the floor, the bottom floor of racing, and we can do that as kind of an update. Again, I'll probably need people to help hold my hand through the way, but I think there's an opportunity for people in the community to see what they can do with these, because some of them, they're loaded with hopium, and some of them have some real legs, no pun intended, for a racing Peg Axie. But I think that's a value, a service that the community would love, actually.
Yeah, the same goes for DeFi Kingdoms as well. It's on another network, and Harmony. But I remember there was a commenter when I covered it like months ago, that I put someone on in Rome to DeFi Kingdom. So make sure you join that channel in the Discord. We could talk more about it, and let us know.
All right, hit us with some Axie, Ray.
All right, happy birthday, Axie, because it's 4 years old. Let me add to the stream here, my screen, and excuse the things on the bottom here, but yeah, Axie's 4 years old, and then so congratulations, happy birthday, all that good stuff, and here we go with the who's whispering? Oh, happy birthday, good. So yeah, the February dev update is here, dropped on February 19th, and definitely check that out. So I'm not going to spend the most time as we did with Star Alice on Axie, but here's a very enlarged breakdown of the article. So you got the origin tentative end of March, so that's coming up fast. Time is just flying by. And get ready for, if you watched our last episode, last week. There was a whole bunch of photos and points on what that entails. So the new V3 Origin gameplay, and that's going to be exciting. So we got the lore for starter axes. We got land questions answered. So there was some speculation of and demand from the community of like, you do an update, but you don't talk about any land, which is a game in and of itself, separate from, in many ways, a standalone game against the Axie Infinity Arena and the current V2 model that we have for Axie Infinity. So go check out that article, man. There's a lot of good info there. You got season 20 esports updates, team growth, and then the Ronin free transaction updates, which is soon. And so so Ronin is no longer going to be free for a lot of people. They're scaling that down because there's a nice spread of Ronin that's across a good amount of accounts from what they were saying. So now you're going to have to actually use Ron or get it given to you by your Scholar manager if you can't afford it yourself, or maybe just swap on the decks some SLP for Ron, and then you can take part in shining transactions. So more demand for Ron, which is the ecosystem's token for the Ronin network. It's going to be good. And on we go. So we had Boba, who had the birthday cake in the beginning, and we had an article that was describing the history of him. And now we're going to have Oleg, who's a veteran warrior with a lifetime of fighting experience. There's more details in the article that give descriptions of these characters that are going to help you in adventure mode when you play the game. And I say when, because how can you not play this game? I don't care if you like the style or not. So new characters, more history and backdrop behind them. And then we were given this leak of a photo in the actual document, which is fantastic because this is what was the land leak, and more information was in the article. So we have a plethora of things here to look at. And I have a photo of the kitchen, which is this right here. And you can see how this was the artwork given to us the week prior in an article. And if we go back here, we have the kitchen. And I don't know whoever is knowledgeable on Axies, but this Axie doesn't look normal to me. And I made a Twitter post that this is a sumo Axie bird class, and maybe there's a buff when you're going to create certain dishes, and when you're in the kitchen. Right?
With those crops, we see wheat on two different sides. Do we think that the difference between those is two different stages of growth?
Possibly.
Looks that way to me.
Possibly, yep. This is a more beginning stage, and then upright. Possibly, yeah. I totally agree with that. And then, so it's going to be also the plots of land are larger now. In the update, they explain how a plot that you own, it has been increased as far as what it's going to look like versus what it was in the demo. There wasn't any, so we can move on here with this. I could show you, which I had it queued. Oh, and another thing is there's going to be, as a reminder, some kingdom fighting, kingdom building across the land. So you're going to have wars that are fought, and the more axes you have, the more you're able to partake in any type of these modes of the game. And you'll probably be able to, as it was alluded to, do certain tasks with axes that aren't being used by yourself in the moment. And they can maybe venture off and harvest something and come back. And maybe there's some type of fighting that takes place that's not on your screen, but we'll see. That's all still to be determined. But these are prototypes. I have those land photos coming up, but this was just detouring off on the on another announcement that the burning of Axes has now ended, sending him on a journey. And yeah, the Lunacian Express has left the station. You can now claim your land items that you got in as a parting gift from sending off your Axes. And so there was an overall of 147,433 Axes that were released amongst 49,513 participants, which is not a surprise to me exactly, but it's definitely a great testing ground for how this is actually something in demand, giving your Axes some extra utility other than just having them to play in arena mode, which there's more to come.
Ray, I have to ask a question. Does this mean they're burning the Axes? Is that what they're doing?
No. So these are still on chain in a wallet, just being held. Which is controlled by the team itself, and still there's no exact knowledge on what they're going to do with them. But that's That's what's happening with those. So they didn't technically get burned and sent to a burner wallet. Maybe all of those axes will get sent to an address with just zeros. We don't know, but team could be doing something with that.
I thought they were just trying to avoid the visual of burning your cute little axes.
Oh, yeah. There's a nice little graphic of a zoom in, which if you ever burned one, but we'll see what happens there. And then also what you did get was a raffle ticket, which tomorrow there's going to be a live drawing of those tickets for all the axes you burned. And there's a chance to win 5 AOC tokens and Mystic Land items. So here we are. These tokens, if you have 5 of them, you can basically use them to mint a new axie that has the potential of having one of its or all of its 6 body parts a Mystic class body part. And these are the most like sought after and rare tokens that are like almost impossible to find now, because people have them, don't realize the potential, or have them and not willing to sell them. Then there'll be 1 winner for the raffle of these 5 AOC tokens, 10 winners, and it'll be live. So tune in if you just want to see all of that happening. And then 100 winners in raffle 3 for a chance to win a CoinGecko and Miss Piggy. And here we go. So just a reminder that there's plenty of games that the community is going to be supported to build, and also build by the Axie team themselves at some point. So if you don't like the current V3, if it comes out and it's not something you take a liking to, and as we're waiting on land, you can just, for sure, there's going to be like a Mario Kart game coming out that a third party is creating, and plenty other games that your Axies could be used for, which are also syncs, which will utilize SLP and AXS token. So all good things for those tokens and the market overall. And here is that land photo that I had when I had the demo in December of 2021, or 2020 actually. I forget now what year it was, but it feels like eternity ago. And these plots are much smaller, you see here, and they have borders. And this was technically one plot, but in that graphic of the updated land photo, they've enlarged it. So you would have had a map right up on the top right. You could coordinate and just go on the map and send your axis somewhere to a specific coordinate to do a certain job. But you would have had to physically be there and click everything. So maybe that changes, and you could use more of your axes to do jobs on the land. And then this was part of the competition they had to win a item if you ranked top 5. So there was a prize for top 5, and many people partook in it if you had land. So that was pretty cool. I won 5th place, by the way.
So I got a question for you before you jump past that one. So what do we think a day in the life is going to be? If you're someone that is like a diehard, or someone that really like, you know what, Axie's my jam, that's my game. And with all these new changes and all these things, because for someone on the outside that hasn't played it, even though I have scholars, there's a lot of moving parts. And if this is your jam, then that's probably exciting. It's kind of like if you're a World of Warcraft guy or an EverQuest guy, all of a sudden there's an update and you got all these new places to go and things to do and combat gear and land and all this stuff. Super exciting. So a day in the life, the person that is really into Axie, what does all this mean and how will they spend their time?
Well, it's still to be determined, but for the most part, what you're going to be able to do is dungeon dive with your Axies. You can have your guild operating on your land, having certain perks depending on what items have according to the land, which it could either be a forest, savanna. You could be mining yourself. There's going to be, just like in every other game, you could be able to just become a resource miner, right? Just grind to trade the resources that you gather on the market via the town hall, which they've mentioned long before. There'll be a center town hall where the market is, where you'll be able to put up your items for sale. And if you just want to battle and get those rare NFT drops from dungeon diving, then you can do that. Or you could play one of the plenty mini games that are going to come out just to rank top in the leaderboards to earn those AXS rewards. So
you could choose the path now. So you could stick
right.
to PvP. You could do PvE with with the mini games and adventures, or you could just straight up become a crafter. So you have a couple different paths that are viable play to earn models now. That's
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, you're going to be able to build on your land the businesses that you want in this metaverse. That's another thing where you'll be able to sell. People can come if you have a Mystic Axie, which was talked about before. You'll be able to craft certain potions that you wouldn't be able to sell if you weren't a Mystic. So there's going to be a lot of areas of the map where you'd want to go based off of what items or Axies a particular person has, which you could market to just generate more income for yourself or trade amongst guild members. It's going to be a pretty interesting and fun venture with all the things that you're going to be able to do. It might be overwhelming at first. Just like with V3 Origins, it's going to be pretty overwhelming with all those new cards for Dawns and Mechs and Dusk. Well, not Dusk, but Dawn and Mechs.
But that does raise a question, though. Why so many things at once?
Well, no, I don't think. No, that's the thing. If you read through the article, they're not going to have all of this just become something at once. They're going to implement these. I'll call them modules. Like if we're talking like Star Atlas over time, so everyone's acclimated and it builds on top of each other the economy of what it ultimately will become. So there'll be a plethora of items that are able to be resourced or rewarded with if you win or from defeating Chimera, and yeah.
So what I'm going to say may sound like shade on Axie, and I don't intend for it to be, but it's just the natural thing that comes up in questions for me. So here we have a pioneer in the space. They crushed it, and they did much of it by accident. As you've already mentioned in the past, they didn't intend on scholars and SLP being the way. And so, but they found themselves here with a boatload of cash. They developed a chain, which I think is incredibly smart so that they can do a lot of cool things with it. But now it almost feels like the stuff that they're developing is not, it's not revolutionary. It's not like they're, wow, look what Axie's doing. It almost feels like they're trying to be everything to everyone. And have they lost their way? I know that sounds like shade from anyone that's not like a diehard Axie fan, but the more that they keep releasing stuff, I'm wondering, like, are they having an identity crisis, or do they specifically know who they are and what they're trying to create?
Yeah, on the contrary, they absolutely, I cannot talk in absolutes, but since I've been in the project, ear to the ground, they absolutely know and have executed on what they saw their project to become. And they haven't recreated, if anything, just the art, because now they had more funding and more people to hire to help. And one of them is Phil Lee, or Phil La, I think his name is, from Niantic of Pokemon Go, which I would recommend at the end you follow him on Twitter. I have a little photo here that you can follow him. He's going to be the lead product lead for Axie Infinity Land. So you'll get more information out of him than for any questions about land than you would have ever gotten from, I guess, a G-host, because at the time that was the only person you could ever get information from. Right. And they were limited in resources and then money as well. Money and then manpower for these different positions. So yeah, to your point, no, I don't think I'm doubling down on Axie because of what they're releasing, which is what they talked about always. So now we're getting visuals, and we're going to have
what Nat said here kind of makes some sense, because there's a lot of games that do that. The truth is, like right now, what Star Atlas is, it's a placeholder for how we're using ship staking. So there are projects that have to do that in phases. And he's saying here that this isn't an expansion of the game. It is the game, and what is currently in place is a placeholder. That's a valid answer for sure, because as a gaming project, you have to think in terms of stages. And so the stages don't necessarily represent what the final product is, but it does help the community have something to play and interact with while you're developing out what the actual vision and model is.
Absolutely.
So that makes sense.
Well said, KNet and Jess. Thanks for. I always knew you had my back, KNet. I love it. We go back and forth, but I feel the love. So exactly that, and they're on track. It's and for whatever it's worth, with the SLP debacle of the economy, a lot of the forte of the team was waiting it out, playing that waiting game, having a plan, but then incorporating the community on their own dime, not necessarily because everyone in the Philippines is complaining and the scholar managers are losing money, because it wasn't ever that. The scholarships was an external thing that happened, which obviously indirectly helped Axie Infinity. But like I would mention on other episodes, this was always the roadmap, and it was going to be executed on one way or another. So cheers to the team with giving out these development updates. And that's the thing. Now people are getting more information than they never got before, and that they always wanted. but it still doesn't seem to be enough in certain ways. So it just goes to show that you can't really keep everyone passive and satisfied, and you just have to keep building. Some days are going to be rough, some won't, but
well, it's kind of like how we mentioned with another project earlier, right? Like you get in danger when you dilute your community with a bunch of people who are there for the cash grab. And I think that's what happened with Axie, is that, they had a very strong community that was very loyal and enjoyed and loved the game. And then they got flooded with a bunch of people there for the money. And so when the money went away, the community kind of flipped toxic a bit. But, if they last the test of time, that'll all be sorted out.
Yeah. See, and to that point, there's many ways, like I said earlier, that you can make money in any one of these ecosystems of an NFT game. You could be the land flipper, you could be the broker to get a percentage off of hooking two people up who needed a piece of land, or you can be the breeder if that's available, or the renter and sell the Axies or just rent the Axies. You can you invest in the token, the governance token, stake it. You can be an LP provider there's so many ways to make money in a game, and then also play in a game when the game is out. So it's just like pick your choice. And personally, whenever the SLP situation happened, because there weren't any sinks or burning mechanisms other than breeding, it was kind of like beating a dead horse, because no one other than those who came in for the money knew enough to just feel confident in what they invested in initially, outside of Axies to breed or to just rent out for scholars. And it did. The team should have came out ahead of it. But again, they have their ways, and I'm used to that way of how they take things to the next level, and it technically works. And you don't get those mercenaries hanging around long because they were just here for profit. And yeah, it's a detox.
You know what my hope is that, and I'm already seeing it on one side. I'm seeing it that games like Peg Axie, and for me, it's a fascinating model to watch, not just that I'm involved in it, but it's fascinating to watch because of how they have observed the industry and figured out a way to say, here's what we can improve upon and come out the gate, but also instill all of these different levers so that if the unknowns as they arrive, we have some levers that we can pull to start adjusting things. So they've done it on that side. I'm also hoping that on the other side that you've got Axie that's saying, that is humble enough to say, look, we know what we did and we did well. We know what we did that wasn't so well. And we're looking to other projects that are learning from our mistakes, making their own mistakes, and what can we learn from that to incorporate into what we're doing. As this whole space develops, the best is going to come from those that are paying attention to not only their own mistakes, but what others are doing as well.
Absolutely. And they've pretty much done that over the course of the last 3 weeks publicly on their Twitters and even in their documents they released that, yeah, there could have been a better way. There was lots of suggestions that we might have not listened to and should have taken action on. Like, that boat has left, and the sentiment around the space now when it comes to Axie, from what I'm hearing and seeing and reading, is that of hope for the future and something to look forward to over the last 3 development updates and what the team has talked about on various interviews and Twitter spaces. There's so much more going on, and there's going to be constant Twitter spaces now with the team, and even Phil, who's the lead, the product lead. So there's way more to look forward to than not if you weren't up to date on what's going on in the Axie space. So, but on to safety here. Make sure that you're downloading Axie in the Ronin wallet from the official link. This was something which we should always pay attention to. Safety is number 1, or else goodbye. And that's about it. So if you're interested, make sure you do it off of the official websites and the official app. And here we go. Like I was talking about earlier, so Phil's views on the Axie Infinity economy and reasons to play. So he's basically taking lead here, as it's his position, and he's giving so much information and explanations of what's going on with the economy. So I would implore everyone to just, if you don't even care about the game, just learn about the economics, because that's what other projects are doing as well. That's why they're successful in their own right, because like Jess was saying, they're paying attention and they're doing what Axie didn't do. But for Axie's defense, they have enough money and the manpower to just do everything that these new projects are doing to incorporate them. It's not the end of Axie just because they didn't do it. And I'm sure that they're looking at the space and learning just as much as those smaller projects who are coming out doing it right. Yeah.
I have this interesting confession to make. It's like, as we're waiting for a lot of these games to mature into the things that are going to be playable, I've been playing other games and I've been observing the type of games that I play, whether they're strategy games, Forex games, resource management games, survival games, things like that. And what I'm discovering is that I've already gamified this space without even playing the game by evaluating the games that you want to be a part of, and by like juggling your resources between the game has become the game for me.
Yeah.
That's what my experience.
The meta game.
Yeah, it's what's happening now.
Pretty much, because there's a lack of actual gaming to do. It's
Right.
more of the finance investor type of personal finance journey game.
GameFi.
Right. So that's the end of Axie, and I'm just gonna share this photo, which was pretty cool, of Nifty Island. So just a reminder, hop on the Discord of Rome to check out my streaming. I'll do that a little bit later after we have a meeting this evening, if you have the time, and I'll see you all there.
Right on. Well,
That's my guy. Okay, bye bye.
I don't know if we were gonna be ending it soon, Banjo, or not, but before we moved on, I wanted to talk about something I found out about last week. It's gonna be a drop this coming week on the 26th, I believe. LEO Trades.
Imposter.
So if you've been following LEO Trades, that's the very first NFT I bought that wasn't a domain name, and I did very well on that. I got I think it's worth like 20 grand now. I got dropped enough super farm tokens that more than covered what I actually paid for it. And then he joined up with Alex Becker. They created Neo Tokyo. That's done very well. I wasn't very smart with riddles, so I didn't get into that. But everybody who was smart with riddles did very well on that. And now he's still being secretive, so there's not a lot of information. That's why I'm not really going to show too much. But they are supposed to be starting to drop the game next week, some of the assets for the game next week. So it's something everybody should probably be looking into. Nobody's really lost big with LEO so far, and the Imposters game is a rip of Among Us, which is very popular. And I've been watching a lot of YouTube streams of that lately, kind of getting into it. So I think it's going to be a good game if you add play to earn mechanics. He's talking about land and all that kind of stuff to a game like Among Us. So anyway, looking forward to that coming up next week, and that's just a little reward for everybody who's been sitting here on the podcast with us this long.
Here's a question for you, because these guys they've already got some success in the space. How do you think they're going to come out the gate with their pricing for NFTs associated with this project?
Oh, it's already expensive.
So interestingly enough, they were talking too high, and the community backlash pushed them to reevaluate. So I'm not sure what the price is going to be now. Yeah, they definitely got smacked. I was sitting, so he dropped the video last week. I can't remember. I was like 20 minutes. Like when he dropped the video, it was like 20 minutes old when I saw it. And then right after that, we were in a Twitter space, and he's getting the usual mix of beat up and bootlicked at the same time from different people in the community. So I'm not sure if the price is going to change. They're definitely going to reevaluate what they originally posted as what the drop was going to look like. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's more native organic NFT metaverse players in his circle, so it won't slide him pulling a gala.
Right. I mean, he has Kongs, he has Bored Apes,
Right.
He has a lot of very wealthy individuals who are easily able to do like what Jesse was saying before and dump too much money into his game far too early. So that's a risk that's definitely there. At the same time, he's doing something really smart, which is that he's not going for the Unreal Engine 5 best game out there, that we've ever seen. He's going for a very simplistic game model and adding economics to it. So, and it's a social game at that. So there's a lot of possibility.
Straight up ETH, or are they like doing some side chain, or what is it sitting on?
Mutable X, I think.
Mutable X.
Yeah, and he created Super Farm, so that's going to be linked to his. That's one of his projects that's also been successful. So he's going to be. It's going to be linked to that in multiple ways, I'm sure.
What other game is being worked on? They're finally starting to release gameplay footage that we all kind of tapped into early. Solantasy, and I don't know if any of you divested completely out of your characters, but they did the warriors, the wizards, the archers. they're starting to release gameplay footage that looks pretty fun. I mean, it's a side scroller in the Mario, Zelda type of world. Maybe next week we can get the video up and show what they've done so far, because a number of us are sitting on those just kind of waiting to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I stopped by their Discord a couple of weeks ago, and I saw how they have demos of gameplay, and I always thought and liked that type of game style, so that's why I held on to them. But yeah, it's looking promising.
Yeah. The money they're putting into the artists for the game is pretty neat.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just go around the horn and see if anybody else has anything before we go. We've got some things coming up this week. Maybe Jesse will let you announce those for people who are joining us late. And we'll start with you, Jesse. Anything going on or anything you want to share before we wrap it up?
No, just the takeaways from the things that I've already shared here on the show is that we do have an interview with Michael Wagner, CEO of Star Atlas, and it should be exciting simply because I'm sure a lot of us have questions that aren't a part of the traditional interviews that we've seen with him in the past. That's one. The other thing is that within the next week or two, I plan to kind of reveal just my dive into the world of Pegaxi, what I've learned along the way, and also looking at through the lens of like, what does it mean to the metaverse as a whole, and what are they doing there? So yeah, those are the two things I wanted to add.
Very good. Ray?
Yeah, I like the phrase of 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So when it comes to NFTs, you're going to need more than one. And if you only have one, it's not looking too good. So not just for resale value, but for actually playing a game. Because sometimes you need 3 cards, 3 axes, or maybe you want more than one ship because if you want to be risky. So make sure you have more than one, and 2 is 1. So maybe 3.
Sounds good. Bonafide.
I like that, Ray. I usually like to buy 3, 1 to hold, 1 to sell, and 1 to be invested in, you know what I mean, for a little bit longer haul. Outside of that, peace and love to everybody in the metaverse, and shout out to all the nomads out there. We're all going to make it.
Fancy.
Yeah, looking forward to that as well. And this is the URL for the following stream. That's going to be by the Hispanic Nomads on Twitch.
Very good. And I think one thing correct me if I'm wrong on the dates, anybody. I think our friends Metaverse Mining Alliance has their IDO on the 22nd. Yep. If you're looking for that information, please look for them on Twitter. Sure. Our last week's episode should have also their contact information as well if you're interested in getting out into a gaming guild as a business IDO. So that's going on as well.
We'll share a little bit more on that. Like, this is, I mean, that we don't shill a lot on the show, and we don't like make alliances or strike strategic partnerships on the whim. And what these guys are doing is impressive. And I think the way that I would sum it up is they are bringing industrial strength, real world financial insights into the play to earn gaming space. And they're creating a project in such a way with their IDO that they're making it accessible to a wider audience, whether you're an investor that isn't really crypto savvy, or someone crypto savvy that doesn't really understand play to earn gaming or NFTs with utility, or just gamers that want to get paid for gaming. They are really looking at it from that angle and creating something that's long-term and stable. So I have, obviously, from what I'm saying here, lots of good things to say about what they're doing. So it's definitely a project you should be looking into.
I agree 100%. I'm glad to call them partners and friends. Wish them the best on their IDO on the 22nd. So good luck, guys.
Yep.
And with that said, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you again next week. Look for that interview with Wagner. I'm always glad to have you here. Like and subscribe. Have a fantastic day.
Cheers.
Atlas Miner, you were born to push the block in search of ore. And now it's time that you are gone. So farewell, Atlas Miner. And farewell, Mud and ONI too. Who's the sector same to you? The pirate bastards ran him through. So farewell, Atlas Miner. They promised you a diamond mine, but I'll be damned, it's hard to find. I hope there's justice for their crimes. And farewell, Atlas Miner. farewell, friend, don't take it hard. Getting killed ain't all that bad. They'll treat you well in the repair yard. So farewell, Atlas Miner.